Good afternoon. My name is Kano Kei, Professor, Faculty of Education, Chiga University. We will now begin the opening ceremony for the International Conference on Science and Technology for Sustainability 2024, hosted by the Science Council of Japan and supported by the Secretariat of Science, Technology, and Innovation Policy Cabinet Office, the Government of Japan, and the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology of Japan. First, I would like to welcome Professor Mitsuishi Mamoru, President of the Science Council of Japan, for the opening remarks. Professor Mitsuishi, the floor is now yours.
Good afternoon, Parliamentary Vice Minister Ms. Imai, distinguished guests, and participants. It is my great honor to welcome you all here today to the International Conference on Science and Technology for Sustainability 2024. The creation of a sustainable society, including toward carbon neutral initiatives, is an issue of great global importance. The Science Council of Japan has been actively working to solve this issue by publishing recommendations and holding symposiums. Since 2003, we have been hosting the International Conference on Science and Technology for Sustainability every year to explore solutions to global issues with the participation of prominent experts from Japan and abroad. The theme of this year's conference is Ecosystem for Sustainable Innovation towards Sustainable Science and Society for 2040. Through keynote speeches and panel discussions, the issues now confronting Japanese researchers, in particular young researchers, who will support Japan's innovation for the next 20 years, will be discussed in order to ascertain possible direction towards solutions. A major feature this year is that the conference is organized and managed by the Young Academy of the Science Council of Japan. The Young Academy was established in 2014 with membership of researchers under the age of 45. It has been actively engaged in transdisciplinary activities across the humanities, the social sciences, and natural sciences, and also very active in its cooperation with other young academies around the world. The Science Council of Japan has compiled an action plan which shall be implemented as a top priority. The action plan highlights fostering the next generation through international collaboration with major countries' young academies. This is a concrete initiative for the increase of the Science Council of Japan's presence in the international arena as a National Academy of Japan. The Science Council of Japan has high expectations for the activities of its young colleagues who are capable of utilizing the dynamism and bold ideas that are unique to the younger generation. The starting point for today's discussion is the Young Academies, the outlook for science and technology in 2040, 10 crucial issues. Since its publication in September 2023, it has attracted considerable attention both domestic and abroad. This opinion addresses crucial issues such as career paths for PhDs, improvement of the research environment, and the ideal system of research evaluation. The declared goal is to promote innovation in Japan. Although some of the issues may be unique to Japan, I do expect that participants from overseas will share their own views on those issues and how they might be solved. I expect also that robust discussion will be conducted from a wide range of perspectives to bring new developments. At the same time, I sincerely hope that this conference will provide an opportunity for many people here today to understand the current environment and the challenges facing young researchers in Japan and the world. These young researchers are the ones that will lead the future academic world, and I trust that you will extend your support to the activities of young researchers. Last but not least, I would like to reiterate that the Science Council of Japan will continue to contribute to the promotion of science and academia in Japan and the world by advancing reform in accordance with its action plan. We aim to be an organization that will gain further understanding and trust from all sides. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Professor Mitsuishi. Next, we have a guest speech from Ms. Imai Ariko, Parliamentary Vice Minister, Cabinet Office, Government of Japan. Ms. Imai, the floor is now yours.
皆さん、こんにちは。日本学術会議を担当いたします内閣府大臣政務官の今井絵理子と申します。本日は持続可能なイノベーション創出のためのエコシステムの形成に向けて、現在の日本の研究者、そして特に若手研究者を取り巻く課題を出発点に、国際的な共通点や違いにも焦点を当てながら、その解決策に向けて議論を深める場と伺っております。本日の会議は、この会場とオンラインを通して各国、各地域から大学、研究機関のみならず、政府や民間企業、そして国際機関とさまざまなステークホルダーの皆さんにご参加いただいております。先ほど三石会長からご紹介ありました通り、本日の会議を運営される若手アカデミーの皆さんは、私と同世代の方が多くいらっしゃいます。2019年にこの国際学術会議の担当を、させていただいた時も、若手アカデミーの先生方といろいろ意見交換をさせていただきました。その時のアカデミーの先生方、今日お越しになられている方も多くいらっしゃいます。すごく懐かしく感じました。その時にいろいろと現場も一緒に回らせていただきました。そして、ここ視察してください。こういった研究所を見てください。そういった声をいただきました。まだ果たせてない約束もありますが、しっかりと今回、2回目の政務官にあたっては、きちんとその約束を果たせるように頑張ってまいりたいなと思っております。本日の会議の中で、皆さんの多様な知見や、そして経験を共有し、課題の解決に向けて活発な議論が行われることを期待しております。また今回初めての試みとして、子どもと一緒に参加できる形で開催されているとお伺いしております。こうした取り組みは、若手アカデミーの皆さんならではの多様な視点を取り入れた取り組みだと思いますので、ぜひ今後もそういった視点を入れながら開催をすることを願っております。 つくづく最近思うことがあります。日本、いえ世界がものすごく速いスピードで変化をしている。この変化する時代において、その時代に飲まれながら生きていくのか、それとも新しく時代を作っていくものになるのか。若手アカデミーの先生方には、後者の方、新しい時代を作っていく、そういった思いで取り組んでいただきたいと思っております。皆さんは私たちにとって希望です。その希望の絶やさずに私たちもしっかりと後押しできるような体制を整えてまいりたいと思います。以上です。本日はご開催誠におめでとうございます。
I will give an introduction to this conference. Let me take this opportunity to again welcome everyone and say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you are in the world. I would like to announce the opening of the International Conference on Science and Technology for Sustainability 2024, Ecosystem for Sustainable Innovation toward Sustainable Science and Society in 2040. It is so nice to have over 600 participants from over 30 countries. Thank you for coming in person and online. Thank you to all who supported this conference, including the Secretariat of Science, Technology, and Innovation Policy, the Cabinet Office, the Government of Japan, and the Ministry of Education, Sports, and Science and Technology of Japan. I am really honored to be the chair of this important conference and give a brief introduction. Today, we have a diverse group of younger experts from Australia, Canada, China, India, South Korea, and Singapore, and UNESCO, who have tried to challenge the problems that hinder innovation creation. We can later hear a lot about their challenges. First of all, I would like to introduce an opinion from the Young Academy of Japan in 2023 called The Outlook for Science and Society in 2040, 10 Critical Issues. Please download it from QR codes. As President Mitsubishi mentioned, the conference is based on the opinion, which has attracted considerably attention both domestic and abroad. Soon after publishing the opinion, Nature has published a News in Focus titled Japanese Research is No Longer World Class. Here's why. You can see the structural problems here. We would like to solve these complex problems with our keynote speakers, panelists, and participants, you. As Ms. Imai mentioned in her speech, we have already taken action regarding the lack of life-work balance at this conference. You can see the nursery in this conference in service. This is the first international conference hosted by the Science Council of Japan to offer a nursery. This is a small but essential step for us. I want to thank all the Secretariat members who helped to make this happen. Please give them a big hand. We'd like you to cooperate with us, which will focus on solutions to problems that hinder innovation creation by a diverse group of younger experts worldwide. Thank you. Danke. Donnebat. Merci. Xie Gracias. Kiitos. Terima kasih. Toda. Grazie. Arigato. 감사합니다. Rahmat. Bairusa. Danyabad. Danku. Shukran. Shukriya. Salamat. Dziękuję. Danki. Suti. Nanduri. Teşekkür. Asante. We have a keynote speech from Dr. Shineha Ryuma, Associate Professor, Research Center on Ethical, Legal, and Social Issues, Osaka University, and the Vice Chair of the Young Academy of Japan. Dr. Shineha, the floor is now yours.
Yes, thank you very much for your introduction, Kano-san. So my name is Ryuma Shineha from Osaka University, and I'm now Vice Chair of the Young Academy of Japan. So my expertise is Science and Technology Studies, SDS, and Science Policy Studies, and I conduct a project on responsive research and innovation, RRI, concerning emerging science as a principal investigator. However, today, I would like to talk as a member of Young Academy Japan. And I'm very happy to be here and have a talk. And firstly, I would like to introduce the activities of the Young Academy of Japan. And then I'll talk about our opinion paper published in 2023 as an entrance for today's discussion concerning sustainable research ecosystem on multi-level, including international, national, and local research committees. So the Young Academy of Japan, YAJ, is an organization established under the Science Council of Japan, the Japanese National Academy. And it comprises researchers under the age of 45 in various fields from the humanities, social science, natural science, engineering, mathematics, medicine, and so on. And each term consists of 3 years. And we are currently in the 26th term with 46 members in total. So our activities are broadly categorized into 3 main areas. First is think tank activities. So as a public interdisciplinary organization for young researchers, we engaged in think tank initiatives and dissemination of ideas. And second is incorporating young researchers' perspectives. So we try to reflect our views in the activities and communication of Science Council of Japan. And third is discussion on special issues. So our activities are conducted by 7 subcommittees focusing on special issues. The subcommittees are established based on members' interest in each term. And during 26th term, we have 7 committees, and each focusing on themes such as human resource development for the future society and science, and for the interdisciplinary research and activities to think about the work-life balance of researchers, and also consider international activities and social collaboration for innovations. We also have a strong interest in the social collaboration for regional revitalization and public relations. This slide highlights our recent initiatives. And we conducted various activities trying to incorporate young researchers' perspectives into our activities as possible. And we have addressed government inquiries regarding academic development and strengthening research capabilities. And to foster deeper connections between science and society, we have engaged in the dialogues with local stakeholders involved in startups, local, regional, and local revitalizations, and other societal initiatives, including interaction with students. And additionally, we are enhancing collaboration with various expert staff and university research administrators, URAs, to develop more effective models of cooperation among the universities and other sectors. So we also actively participate in the global discussions with global young academy networks to foster international collaboration and exchange. And so on, and we also conducted a nationwide survey about the research evaluation and concern about the research environment. We collected approximately 8,000 young researchers in Japan, 8,000 young researchers' responses in Japan. And we now try to understand their concerns and demands, and sometimes maybe complaints about regarding research evaluation and research ecosystems. So I'd like to show some results of our questionnaires. So this slide, sorry, a little bit small characters. So, however, this slide shows a comparison of sense of important evaluation items between the current system and the ideal system among young researchers. And the bigger number means very important as evaluation items which young researchers feel. So blue bar means responses toward a current system, and on the other hand, orange bar means responses toward the ideal system. So generally speaking, so wait a moment. So generally speaking, we can find the trend that young researchers have concerns and complaints about the current evaluation systems. And I'd like to emphasize the point is significant difference between the difference in items related to the educations and the expert working in the local communities. So at least we can say that the young researcher expected more strong evaluation in those activities of the educations and expert activities in local communities and areas. So and then we also conducted multi-correspondence analysis, and from our analysis, we found changes of major response patterns concerning the important factor to the research ecosystem. For example, motivation, or the sustainable funding, sustainable jobs, and the strong support system, and the communication with outside of the university and the academic sector, and so on. And we found change of the major response pattern according to the career paths, life stages, genders, and so on. And interestingly, the meta perspectives concern research ecosystems are shown in the PhD holders comparing the non-PhD holders. So it means that they are getting to know the science in society. So we need to the communication with other sectors and actors more and more. And for the interest of time, I have to skip the detail of the data. However, for more details, please see our next data of our opinion papers. So, and we, the Young Academy of Japan, published an advisory opinion paper entitled The Outlook for Science and Society in 2040, 10 Critical Issues. This our opinion paper was published through the Science Council of Japan in September 2023. And this paper is a result of an accumulation of discussions with various stakeholders involved in science and academia. And this paper has five key features. And the first is reflecting the need of young researchers. So we try to incorporate the perspectives of young researchers working on the ground. And second is interdisciplinary and multifaceted discussions. So, and it covers a wide range of fields, including humanities, social science, natural science, engineering, and so on. And third is the focused prioritization while comprehensively organizing challenges. It narrows the focus to the 10 critical issues that require immediate action. And fourth is this paper have a character of official and definitive document. It is very public publication issued by the Science Council of Japan. And fifth point is that rich in reference and data, and the document is well supported by citation and our data. So, and please see it and download from the QR code mentioned in Kano-san and in the flyers. So, and since its publications, our opinion paper has attracted media attention, not only domestic, but also international media. So that this paper was took up by the newspapers, radio programs, and international comment paper in Nature. And furthermore, it has played a role in shaping national plan and science policy in Japan. So now I would like to provide a brief overview of the content of our opinion papers. And fostering better innovation is essential for our society. And there are high expectations for science and academia to play an important role in this process. So at this point, it is critical to further promote regional collaboration, international research collaboration, and interdisciplinary research as key arenas for innovation in the future. However, in our opinion, the foundation which is necessary for driving innovation has been steadily weakening. So we think that now is a critical time to enhance the research environment while fostering human resources and establish clear career paths. And without these efforts, progress in interdisciplinary research, international collaboration, and regional collaboration will stagnate, jeopardizing Japanese ability to drive innovation over the next 20 years. So we have strong concern about that. So what is hindering our ability to foster innovation? This diagram organizes the factors obstructing innovations. Sorry to a little bit complicated map. However, that's the why individual issues have been pointed out in various previous discussions and literatures. So our diagram provides a structural overview of how these issues interrelate and create the current situations. And the first diagram shown in center is that research environment marked by excessive competition and demanding workloads. And this, we think this is a major issue. So this has triggered a negative spiral and declining researchers' numbers and reduced research capabilities. So the worsening research environment can be attributed to several factors. For example, the increasing burden of the various tasks, including non-research related tasks, and the reduction in basic funding and insufficient research support system also affects. And inappropriate and short-sighted evaluations metrics, which also problem. So they have made conducting research increasingly difficult. So on the other hand, the decline of researchers' number and capability is not solely due to the getting worse research environment. So other factors include the difficulty of career development of PhD holders. So Japanese relatively low rates of university and graduate school enrollment comparing to the other major advanced countries. And the silo methods should be considered between the industry, government, academia, as well as between academic disciplines. And these interconnected issues create a situation where researchers are unable to fully tackle challenging research topics. So, and we need to engage more interdisciplinary research, international collaboration, and regional collaboration. However, it was prevented by various factors. So this also, we think this also leads a brain drain. So the issue and challenge are structural. And so what should we do and where should we start? So we propose 10 critical issues that must be addressed now. For the interest of time, I can't discuss all content of a suggestion. However, I would pick up several points. For example, in the second point, when we focus on the problem on the enhanced evaluation and support for the interdisciplinary research and regional collaborations, and it is urgent to establish a system that can appropriately evaluate interdisciplinary research that transcends sectors and fields, as well as academic studies aimed at solving regional challenges on a long-term timescale. And regarding evaluation, the YAJ conducted a survey with responses from approximately 8,000 young researchers across Japan, mentioned previously. And the researchers in precarious employment situation are under pressure to survive. And they already adapt to the kind of the culture of publish or perish. And also simultaneously, we and they feel strong stress to it. In this context, inappropriate, overly quantitative metrics can lead to a tragic evaluation culture of publish or perish. And we know that it discourages us and researchers from undertaking bold challenges. So international discussion on revising these metrics practice are gaining momentum, and evaluation should aim to promote academic advancement and cultivate researchers. And the design of evaluation system must be carefully aligned with the vision and missions of the organization and individual researchers. And when we look at the fourth point, also I would like to look up the fourth point. And this point is the development of cross-sector collaboration platforms. And academia must collaborate with various sectors such as the local communities, government, industry, and so on, and to solve significant cross-disciplinary challenges and cultivate talents capable of fostering such collaboration and challenges. Beyond building matching system and platforms, it is also essential to establish flexible cross-sector partners, arrangements, and promote long-term internship and visions. And I think this point will be also discussed a lot in the panel discussions. And from the perspectives of my expertise on STS and RRI, we focus on the process of interactions. We should focus on the process of interactions. In other words, we should focus on the new connection trials between sectors and actors more and more. For the research evaluation and issues discussed now, and those kind of productive interactions are collecting research attention as a kind of the intermediate impact for the future big impact. So now this point, productive interactions become a hot topics in the discussion on research evaluation system in the world. So, and at the fifth point, and I would like to talk up the fifth point, and including basic funding and strengthening various experts to fully utilize competitive funding. While the necessity of enhancing basic funding has widely recognized, and we emphasize that the lack of basic funding and research support expert has reached a point where competitive funding cannot be adequately utilized. And we here had often that the young researchers have expressed that even with increasing in funding, the associated administrative burden and cost outweigh the benefits, leading to a paradoxical situation where competitive funding cannot be effectively leveraged. So from an educational perspective, basic funding also present big challenges. Looking ahead 20 years, cultivating the next generation of researchers is an essential theme. However, for example, particularly in natural science, the primary environment for education is laboratories. However, laboratory operates mainly by the operation fund allocated by universities and governments, and also conducted by the external funding secured by individual researchers. However, as operational funds are being reduced in Japan. So therefore, laboratories which cannot secure external funding are facing difficulties to provide effective and appropriate education for students. So moreover, external funding is inherently uncertain, often focusing on short-term metrical results, and they are incompatible with the mid to long-term perspective required for the education. So education should not rely on research at external funding, but also should instead be supported for the allocation from educational and research institution and government. And this point also relates to the 8 point. So that's the 8 point is a suggestion to reduce the household burden for education costs. And as I mentioned earlier, Japanese university enrollment rates and number of master and doctor degree holders are low comparing to the other advanced countries. So combined with the challenges of population decline, ensuring steady supply of innovative talent is critical matter to maintain the competitiveness. So while the support for the doctor program has improved in this several 10 years, 20 years, however, that further policy measures are needed to reduce the financial burden of families, including those with undergrad and master students. So, okay, that I would like to skip this point, and 9 and 10 points. We need to change our research cultures. Anyway, so, and this is a summary and structure map of our opinions. So we have outlined the structure issues preventing science and academia from contributing effectively to innovations. And I introduced our 10 proposals to address these challenges. And in the face of global challenges such as climate change and geopolitical shifts and so on, to create sustainable global research ecosystem has never been more urgent. So I and we, YAJ, hope that let us begin discussion to foster our future ecosystem across countries, sectors, and disciplines. If our opinion paper will serve as a key to these endeavors, it's very pleasure for us. Okay, then thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Shineha. We now would like to open up the floor for a couple of questions. So please raise your hand. Oh, thank you. Yep, or to be more. You use a microphone for the Zoom audience. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Shineha, for this really fantastic presentation of what I think has been truly inspirational work from the Young Academy. My question for you is that you have some very concrete and very clear and detailed recommendation. Have you been able to give those recommendations to different government bodies or funding agencies? Have you achieved any success in convincing people to implement some of those recommendations? Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much for your questions. So yes, of course, the government try to encourage the research funding and try to keep and increase research budget for the scientists and the scholar academic schools. However, that's the character of the funding system is changing in this over 25 years. And as a result, so that the usual operational fund was decreasing in this 25 years, over 25 years. As a result, we need to keep to run to get extra funding to keep our research and educational environment. So, and like in the red queen effect in the Alice in Wonderland, so that we need to continue to run. So anyway, and however, that we think this situation is not only about the amount of money, because of the system. evaluation system and the budget management system should be changed. However, that if we success to change about that, that we can do much better with same amount of money. So that's it's a very good question. And so that we need collaboration with the government and the funding agency and other sectors. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Oh, okay, one more question. This is the last question, sorry.
Thank you, Shina, for a wonderful presentation and summarizing the issues. And I'm very surprised that most of these issues are very common to Indian research environment as well. What is interesting to know about that you made the recommendations, but what query I have just to understand that what is the system of funding in Japan, especially while like, for example, in India, most of the research funding comes from the federal government. So how it is the system in Japan, whether it is more for the government or how much is the contribution from the industry in the research funding?
Thank you very much. And yes, Japan is also true in the government federal funding is the main resource for the universities and the research communities. However, I have to say another point is that there's a gap of the science policy between the national policy and the local science policies. So, and of course, you know that in Japan that there's 47 prefectures and the local autonomies and big local autonomy, and they have their own local innovation policies in some usually. However, there's a gap of the content and how to say that's less visible relationship between the national and local innovation policies. So that such kind of the systematic issues should be then resolved and with the discussion of us and policymakers and local policymakers and so on. Yes.
Thank you again, Dr. Shineha. That's all the time for question. So we will now move on to the next speaker. Now we have a keynote speech from Professor Audrey Morris, Professor of Chemistry at McGill University. Professor Morris, the floor is now yours.
Thank you so much. Well, it's really a fantastic pleasure for me to be here today in Japan to talk about my organization, the College of the Royal Society in Canada, as well as to start a conversation with you about the wonderful work that was presented just in the presentation just before. So what I'm going to do here today is to talk to you a little bit about my country, about my association, the College of the Royal Society of Canada, and also tell you then a little bit about what we can do to map out the challenges in the context of research with what we're doing in Canada and maybe try to work together. So Canada is a really big country, it's the second largest country. It's a monarchy, our monarch is Charles III. Although we have a really large country, we only have a small population of 41 million people. I'm coming from Montreal and from a university called McGill. This is the environment in which I work. You can see here that right now there's a lot of snow in Montreal. It looks like this at the moment. It's very cold. It's minus 15 at the moment. In the summer, it looks very nice, and it has this very nice, vibrant city where we can listen to music, and it's really a fantastic place. Please come to Montreal. In Canada, what we do is we also honor the Indigenous people who have lived on the land where we are now. And at McGill, we often, when we start a presentation, acknowledge the role of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe nations who have had a meeting place where the campus now is. But I'm here representing the College of the New Scholars, Artists, and Scientists of the Royal Society of Canada. So I'm going to try to tell you a little bit about that. So the College of the New Scholars, Artists, and Scientists in Canada was created about 10 years ago, and it was created by the other academies the senior academies in Canada, the Academy of Science, the Academy of Social Science, and the Academy of Arts and Literature. And they came together and they decided that they needed a body that would represent the next generation. So they created this and they called it the Royal Society of Canada College. What is really interesting about this body is that it's intrinsically multidisciplinary. So we have artists, scientists, engineers, scholars, writers, people of all sorts of expertise. They all have to be academics, though, and hold an appointment in the university. The mandate of the Royal Society College is to gather scholars, artists, and scientists in a highly productive stage of their career into a single collegium where new advances in understanding will emerge from the interaction of this diverse intellectual, cultural, and social environment. So usually in order to get there, you need to be highly accomplished scholars, and you need to be within the first 15 years of your PhD. We have every year a new class of about 50 members. We are about 400 now, and you're elected for a term of 7 years. You can serve, so this society serves as the young academy in Canada, really. As of 2025, the Royal Society of Canada College has become the Category 3 voting member of the International Science Council, and I'm going to mention that to you a little bit more in a few moments. So within the Royal Society College, we attend and host different events, including Royal Society College webinars. So for instance, this month, we're going to have a webinar on carbon tax. So that's the type of events that we host. We mentor young scholars, artists, and scientists. We serve on committees, working groups, and we have a number of different activities, and I highlight a few in a second. We participate in regional and international programming. We nominate peers and contribute to selection processes so that we can continue to have a vibrant community in the college. And we also provide advice to government and to the public through reports, white papers, and more. We have a number of lead projects, and I'm going to highlight a few to you today. So the first one is called ARDA. So through this project that was founded by my colleague, Carly Kehoe, who's the past president of the college, she really cared about artists that are displaced and because of wars or because of persecution in their home country, they can come to Canada and be appointed by university, and we will give them a special membership to our college. Often, again, these are people who suffer from war, conflict, or threats of violence. So what we do to them is we give them the membership, which comes with all the advantage I mentioned earlier, but we also mentor them, help them navigate the Canadian system, and we offer them workshops so that they can develop, a knowledge of the country and be successful as academics here. So this is something that's very important to us, and we're looking really to partner with other academias in the world in order to better help our at-risk and displaced colleagues. Another thing that we're doing is really engaging with Indigenous communities. So in Canada, we have a lot of Indigenous communities that we're trying to help in the context of really having major low representation of Indigenous scholars in academia in general. And one of our really, I would say, highlights event that we are participating in is that we have launched a tri-academy partnership with Australia and New Zealand on Indigenous engagement. So this tri-agency partnership called TAP was launched in Vancouver this fall in November, and we have hosted the 3 academies in Vancouver to discuss to try to establish an international Indigenous-led research agenda with the goals of impacting public policy to benefit Indigenous communities, to incorporate Indigenous student voices and meaningful international mentoring context on the convenings of research and research agenda, and eventually to advance through leadership on how post-secondary institutions can innovatively partner with Indigenous communities. So we really look forward to working more with them. There's some really fascinating work that happens in that space, and we hope to be an agent of that. Another thing that was quite unique to Canada is that we have 2 official languages, English and French. And this is really important because Francophone academics and artists have less visibility and recognition in the Canadian context. So Francophones are about 1/5 of the Canadian population, but this number is actually going down in time. So we really need to make a big effort to continue to have research happening in French so that we could maintain the specific culture around this. And the college is really working to help having this research being better discoverable, as well as better recognized. And this also goes along with Indigenous languages that we're trying as well to incorporate in our curriculum. So ensuring that all our college members represent Canada and its linguistic diversity is very important. We propose for a lot of our activities bilingual programming. For instance, our webinar are offered in 2 languages. We work to help discoverability of French research context with different bodies, including in Quebec. And we created a Francophone caucus where we reflect on those questions. And we have a journal called Facet that offers the option to publish in multiple languages, including in Indigenous languages. So now I'm going to segue into the second part of my talk, where I'm going to try to highlight to you a little bit more what we're doing in Canada that I think could be aligned with the effort that you developed on your report, and maybe develop in the future a similar initiative in Canada so that we could compare some ideas and some of the conclusion of this type of work. So looking into the background for this, I found this report that was asked by the federal government in Canada. What they did is they assembled an advisory panel composed of these prestigious scholars that you can see here. So these are people who have a very in-depth understanding of the funding system of academia in Canada. Frédéric Bouchard here, he's actually a good friend. He's actually science philosopher, so he knows, an epistemologist. He knows very well about these types of systems, and he led this effort that I'm gonna showcase here. So I used this report. I'm only showing a glimpse of it, but this report was really informative to me in showcasing some of the conclusions and putting parallels between some of the conclusions from your work and what we're doing in Canada. So from the really nice diagram that has been introduced earlier, I wanted to highlight the question of research environment and excessive competition, and especially the context of the lack of time for sufficient research, and say that this is definitely something that the Canadian report found as well, that Canadian researchers do suffer from not having enough time to think and concentrate on their research. And this was highlighted by one of the conclusions called Supporting the Talent Continuum, in which the panel heard clearly from students, early career researchers, senior and university administrators and student association that the program addressing the talent continuum must be simplified and harmonized to reduce the burden on students, postdoctoral fellow and early career researchers, because they do not have enough time to focus on their research. So really, again, very echoing really what we've heard from the colleagues from Japan. So they're really calling for a well-coordinated and agile federal support system that is responsive to the talent it supports, means having simplified support mechanisms. So we need to simplify the administration, and we need to really make sure that researchers have time to do the research that they want to do. So this is an example of it. We discussed earlier the fact that the systems need to change and not everything is about money, but I think the money issue is also important. In the context of the Canadian system, Canada has been really not doing well as compared to other OECD countries in having staggering and even declining investment in R&D in general. So I checked this as a data that really represents both industry and government investment in R&D, and you can see that Canada, as compared to other similar countries, is really not doing well and is not on a upward trajectory. So I think this is definitely something that is bad. I do not have this information here, but also the ratio of basic science versus applied science is also another really interesting topic on which Canada needs to do better, like Japan. We did mention as well the notion of work-life balance and gender equity. So this is also something that I wanted to highlight. This is not from the same report. This is from another reference that I found about really interesting data going into the nature of why women have a harder time developing their research in academia. So this is some research that looks in particular at the question of the dual family couples. So this is couples in which the two partners are academics. And it's really interesting because these are often environments in which both the husband and the wife have very similar goals, they really understand each other, they often support each other. But even in these types of very balanced relationship, it is found that the women often have more responsibility to take care of the marriage and parenthood, and they call this system the family penalty that can manifest itself in reduced leisure time and feelings of constantly being rushed, and that can affect women's psychological well-being, physical health, and interpersonal relationship. This data is interesting because it looks into detail on this side about the things that are making matters worse for women. So for instance, the gender role stereotypes. So this is really culturally, cultural burden from people around women. It could be their family, their friends, it could be colleagues. Also, the demands of the work itself are two major criteria for women who feel pressured in this environment. And the thing that makes matter better for women and will encourage them to stay in research are, for instance, the fact of having a supportive partner. That's really interesting, and again, something that we find as a lot of is very important. Having a flexible schedule as well is something that can help a lot. And also enjoying the work, which I also found was really interesting. So I think by doing these types of surveys, we could actually understand a bit better some of the barriers and maybe understanding a bit better what the system can do in order to truly support and help with the gender gap. So why are these issues important? What we found is that the non-academic work burden is not efficient. The talent's salary is high and they should not do tasks that are better suited to support staff. And in Canada, this is really a big problem. Talents are hard to find and maintain in business. So if we are not doing this job correctly, our colleagues who have a high profile, they tend to move to different countries. And we've seen this in Canada, that a lot of our colleagues do leave to have systems, to go to systems where there's better support for academics. The lack of good work-life balance as well means that it's a bit harder for a female to stay in this environment, or it's harder for them to climb the ladder and get better position. Also, it's been found that male colleagues care as well about parenting, and they also now demand better and better accommodation. So the change is happening, but the system is too slow to respond to these demands. So I find that from the report that I mentioned earlier, the 2023 report from the federal government, there are two recommendations here, recommendation 7 and 9, which is saying that the panel should prioritize the simplification and harmonization of the talent suites of programs. In particular, the coordination committee should be responsible for providing direction on streamlining and harmonizing scholarships and fellowship programs. So just making things easier, less burdensome which I think really aligns very well with some of the 5 key domains that were important, especially the development of a human resource and career path. And recommendation 9 is consideration should be given to enhance programming to support early to mid-career professors to accelerate their pathways to becoming leaders of tomorrow, which also speaks to the career path, but also the restructuring of a research environment. So more focus should be placed on sheltering the time of researchers for research. The burden placed on researchers is unreasonable and is going up. So this is also something that is coming from this report. And the major cause is the increased demands from government for accountability. While these asks are reasonable, they're also not done in a way that leads to the hiring of staff that are supposed to help academics, but rather what they do is they police the academics. And I think this is a mentality that needs to really change. There are major progress on the work-life balance, but we think in Canada, there's still more that should be done. The parental leaves are now well implemented throughout Canada. This includes for graduate student college scholarships in Canada, so this is really good. The leaves are considered for tenure and promotion, and the clock is stopped. So this is really effective, and we've seen an improvement in women representation now in mid-career. But the childcare supports remain an issue. In Canada, the situation largely depends on provinces, and right now what we see is that the cost for childcare is really becoming higher and higher, and it makes accessibility a real challenge for young families. So we will continue to have childcare being a key question for gender balance, I think, in the future. So this work that you've done is really absolutely incredibly important, and I think it's leading the way for all young academics. Some points are very general and I believe apply to many countries. We heard our colleague Chandra said that it does apply as well to India, and I can tell you a lot of them resonate with the situation in Canada. In Canada, we have a really highly educated population. I think it's very similar actually to the situation in Japan. We have very comparable numbers. We want to keep it this way, and we want to keep using this highly educated task force for innovating for the future. You mentioned as well the global collapse in college enrollment. We do see similar situations in Canada as well. So these are domestic students enrolled in community colleges in Canada. And you can see that it's going down. So again, risking the good numbers that we saw earlier. So we are not on the uprise. We're actually seeing the similar trend as the one you see in Japan. And I have to confess that before doing this work, I had not realized that we had this attrition in community enrollment, in community college enrollment, but it is actually happening in Canada as well. So it is something to worry about. So in conclusion, I would say that what we can do together is working with you, Japan. You lead the way in understanding the challenges of academia, and I think we should run similar surveys. And I have already decided with our executive that in Canada, we will try to run a similar one in my tenure as president, so in the next couple of years. We should push the global institutions as well on such agendas and also to position these topics at the global scale. What I think we're in right now is what is called a tragedy of the commons. This is a type of question in which we must come together to address it globally, because if we are competing as small nations, we're actually going to make matters worse. The research systems are competing for talents, and if one system is doing something a bit more with some incentive, it will drag the talents from others. And that's not a good way of running it. A better way is to come together, improve the system, and make sure we can nurture our talents in our local nations. I think the closing message to young researchers, academia is an amazing place to share and have ideas. Globally, academia is becoming more inclusive and a space to combat doom and gloom. So join academia to be part of the change. And I'll just finish by saying that last week I was in Oman for the Global Knowledge Dialogue and the 3rd International Science Council General Assembly. These are the 17 young academies that are currently part of the International Science Council. And as you know, they're now welcoming young academies with, at the moment, 0 fee. So there's a lot of encouragement for the young academy in Japan to join this organization. So with that, I would like to welcome any question you might have. Thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Moores, for your inspiring talk. We found we had many common grounds between Canada and Japan. So we will now open up the floor for a few questions. And for those joining us online, please send your questions in the Q&A box in the Zoom toolbar. Yes, we have a question over here.
Well, thank you for your excellent presentation. I feel like we all have the same problems in Canada, Japan, and even in South Korea. And particularly, I'm interested in the RSC College because I believe that we really need like core facilities with PhD scholars to make research ecosystem more sustainable. So I think that's a very good idea to build such an institution. But then I'm just wondering why as you said, those members in that college has 7-year term, right? So I'm just wondering why they are just hired as kind of permanent researcher to give them more stable research environment.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. And maybe let me clarify a little bit. So all of the members of the college, they are professors in Canadian institutions, universities, and they're just appointed in this. It's really like the Young Academy of Japan, right? So it's the same principle. It's an academy. So we come together and we work on these topics, and the 7-year limit is so that we remain the young people, right? So after a lot of the scholars who have now become alumni of the college are becoming fellows of the academies within the senior academies within the Royal Society of Canada, and they have then an appointment for life.
Do we have any questions or comments? Nothing? Okay, that is all the time that we have for questions. So please, thank you again to Professor Morris. So now we have a keynote speech from Dr. Fabian Medvecki, Associate Professor at the Australian National University. Dr. Medvecki, the floor is now yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me here. Like Professor Moores, I live in a country that has a colonial history, so we usually start also by recognizing the people whose land we work on, and I want to acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people who are the traditional custodian of the place that I live and work on. Thank you very much for having me here. And today I want to talk about innovating for our future. And I want to talk about the interaction between responsibility, growth, and sustainability. And I really want to answer one key question. How do we harness our innovative capabilities to create a better future? And that question has a number of questions within it. Firstly, there's a question about how do we harness our innovative capabilities, more simply, for whatever purpose that might be. And then there's another question about how do we create a better future. Those two questions don't necessarily need to go together. They can actually be distinct questions. And then there's a third question within that I want to ask, which is how do we assess a better future? And I really want to consider this idea of assessment because assessments can both be empowering and limiting. And I particularly want to consider the way that assessments limits us from doing what is possibly the best thing we could be doing. To draw on this, I want to draw on the idea of responsible research and innovation. And so my talk will largely start off by talking about responsible research and innovation, thinking about how innovation is often imagined or blended in with an imagination of what the economic system should be like. And then I want to consider some of the limitations and challenges to responsible research and innovation and to our innovation structures. And I want to consider alternative models or different ways we can think of innovation and that we can think of approaches to growth and other forms of assessments that we might have. And lastly, I want to think about what we draw from this in terms of implications for our research and innovation system. Let me start off by saying that in many cases, what we want from innovation is for innovation to be transformative. We want innovations, I think most of us, because we want to make a difference in the world in a significant and interesting and important ways. And for innovation to be transformative, it has to do at least two things. It has to align with the aspirations we have for where we want the world to go. It has to be aligned with our aspirations, our wishes, our desires, our hopes as a people. And it has to also align with what we might want as market users or users more generally. Very simply, if we have the very best innovation in the world, but nobody wants to use it, it's not going to do anything. So there needs to be both aligned with what we want, but also aligned with the end user's desire to be used. These two ideas are the underlying aspiration for responsible research and innovation. RRI, Responsible Research and Innovation, came to prominence about 15 years ago, predominantly in Europe, in the European setting. It was especially embedded in Horizon 2020, which at the time was the largest single funding stream ever. It was a massive funding stream. And it was embedded profoundly in it to the point where any research on novel technologies, so nanotech, gene tech, biotech, robotics, and so forth, had to have responsible research innovation embedded within the program. But it's gone beyond Europe. There are responsible research and innovation programs in Australia. And as we heard from Professor Shinya, also there is some work in Japan going on this topic. So it's become quite a global notion and approach. In its most classic explanation or understanding, responsible research and innovation rests on four core principles. Anticipatory, the idea that researchers and innovators should try and anticipate some of the implications of their work. They should think ahead about what their research could do, both the good bits, but also the bad bit or problematic bits. It should be reflective. We should be thinking about our role in innovating. What are we doing as we contribute to innovation? We should be reflecting our own practices and on the practices of innovation. It should be inclusively deliberative. We should listen to lots of people throughout the project, include people within the discussion about the work that we're doing right from get-go. And there should be a responsiveness in there. If innovators and researchers hear things from their stakeholders, there should be a response throughout the innovation process. This is all rather abstract, so let me give you a few more concrete examples. I have a colleague in the UK who has been working with robotics in elderly care. And in her research as a social scientist, she's worked with engineers, elderly people, and elderly carers to make sure that, to hear what everybody wants, to make sure that, firstly, the engineers can understand what it is that would be used and useful for both the elderly people and the carers, but also so that the elderly and the carers can understand what is the limitations and the possibilities of the engineering programs. And then putting this together in conversations helps design more useful and more meaningful innovation. Likewise, I have a colleague in New Zealand who has been working on a gene technology for honeybees to help them stay healthy in the face of certain parasite, particularly known as varroa mite. And they have worked with beekeepers to talk about the delivery mechanisms for this gene technology in a way that beekeepers will want to use to maintain the honeybees in a healthy state and to keep the level of their history as a premium product. New Zealand honey is incredibly expensive and valuable, and they don't want to lose their market share. So this kind of interactions is part of the idea of responsible research and innovation, talking to different people right throughout the innovation process to make sure that the innovation aligns with both aspirations and market desires. Like all processes, these are embedded in social, economic, and political narratives. We have discussions around what innovation does and what research does. And arguably one of the most powerful narrative, at least for most governments, is the economic narrative. We hear this, I think, in most countries, that we need to have innovation to remain competitive because it's going to grow the economy. That is probably the most powerful narrative that comes across the world, at least across much of the world, around why innovation is something that we should be pursuing. Yes, it can do many other things, but the idea of competitiveness and growth of the economy is often very, very powerful. And it's easy narrative to sell, right? And the narrative, the story often goes like this: the more we have research and innovation, the more economic growth we're going to have. That's a very common narrative. These narratives put together around what it is that we do when we innovate have limitations. Firstly, there's often a fairly limited view of what we take to be innovation. The OECD defines innovation as the implementation of a new or significantly improved product, good or service, or process, a new marketing method, or a new organizational method in business practice, workplace organization, or external relations. This is very much a business idea of innovation. Innovation is bringing a good to market or a good that will benefit the market in some way. Of course, that's not the only imagination of innovation. I really like the idea that in the hotel industry, innovation is a new color scheme. Putting colors together for a room that people haven't put together before. Not something that's necessarily bringing good to market. You can't patent it. You can't really sell it. It's just a different way of doing things. But there are also other imaginations of innovation. There's things like frugal innovation. Frugal innovation is reducing the complexity and cost of product and its production, often by removing non-essential features. And in fact, much of the world, much of the things that we do are, some people have said, over-engineered. We put more complexity into products than we need to. That's part of how we patent goods and so forth. Frugal innovation goes the other way. We reduce the complexity, it reduces the costs, it does all sorts of things, and also allows for other products that might be much more useful. The Tata Nano was a classic example of a car that costs about $2,000 US dollars to sell. No air conditioning though. But these are the ideas. There's also social innovations, the developing and deploying of effective solutions to challenging and often systemic social and environmental issues in support of social progress. To give you an example, there was an application developed in the UK for people who took morning jogs that lined them up or connected people with elderly people who were living on their own. And it created a jogging route so that as they would go for their morning jog, they could drop in by one or two people's houses and say hello. It's a really simple thing to do, but that actually does an enormous amount of good. We know that loneliness is one of the biggest correlator with health. Very, very simple thing, no financial benefit, but enormous amount of social good. And then there's traditional knowledge, which UNESCO defines as knowledge, innovation, and practices of indigenous and local communities around the world, developed from experience gained over the centuries and adapted to the local culture and environment. In Japan, for example, you have the use of fermented pomegranate juice, which acts as a waterproofing substance. It's much better than plastics in many ways, and there's many others like it. All these are just other ways to think of what innovation can do or can be beyond this kind of for-market idea of innovation, or the idea that innovation should be something that is inherently built into a business model that makes money or grows the economy. Similarly, there are concerns about imagining the economy as a principal assessor or method of assessing the value of innovation. Firstly, to use economic growth as a measure of success is incredibly short-sighted. Economic cycles, when it comes to GDP, are often very short temporally. We look at only over a few years at best. Secondly, is geographically limited. GDP measures are usually per country, and many of our problems are global. So it's incredibly limited in terms of what we can do and what we can innovate. Secondly, it does something very strange when we think of GDP as an important factor, or as the dominant factor for why we should be innovating. It drives us to innovate things because they make money, not because they're interesting, useful, or worthwhile. It reroutes the aim of science and technology and innovation away from creating better knowledge, creating a better world, towards creating more money. And those two things don't necessarily come together. In response to this, colleagues of mine and I have put forward the idea of responsible stagnation. The idea is that sometimes the right thing to do is not to innovate. Not always. It's not that we should never innovate, but sometimes it's the most responsible thing to do. It might not generate as much money, but it might just be better for the world at times. To put very bluntly, we probably don't need a new iPhone every year. We can probably buy a new iPhone every second or third year and wouldn't be much worse off for those kind of things. So there's a question to ask, when should we innovate and how should we approach innovation? And there's responses to this too. One view is to take what's known as an A-growth theory or A-growth approach. The idea of A-growth is that we are agnostic to the effect of our decisions on economic growth. It's not that we think economic growth doesn't matter, but that it's not the primary driver. And interestingly, until about the Reagan administration in the US, policies weren't costed necessarily. That only started in the Reagan administration, and it's been fairly well recognized that the Clean Air Act would never have passed if it had gone through the Congressional Budget Office. That was an A-growth decision. It was taken because it was thought to be the right thing to do, irrespective of its impact on growth. Corporations also sometimes have this approach. There's a form of corporations known as benefit corporations. Most corporations have a legal obligation to try and make a profit for their shareholders. Benefit corporations are a specific form of corporation that, by their charter, are allowed to have some primary higher aim. Classically, they may have an aspiration towards some environmental aim or some social aim. And as long as they're pursuing those aims, if they don't turn a profit for a period of time, they cannot be litigated by their stakeholders or their shareholders. It's just another way of doing it. This is not to say that we don't care about running for profit. Patagonia is probably the best known benefit corporation, and they do very, very well. And it turns out many of the benefit corporations do well. It's not that they don't care about doing well. It's that they have some higher aspiration, some higher purpose beyond turning a profit. So one question I have is, what if the research system was more like a benefit corporation? And what if we approached our research mostly as an A-growth approach? What if we rethought what it was that we were doing? And with this, I want to engage and respond to some of the ideas of remodeling science for society for the next 20 years, the 10 recommendation of the Young Academy of Japan. Just to start off with, I want to say that I think we can fairly say, at least in most countries, that research is run largely as a full growth paradigm. We compete for funding that has to deliver impact, and increasingly, we need more and more explanation of impact. We need to show what that impact is, and that's often defined in terms of economic well-being or contribution to the economy or those kind of things. We have increasing focus on applied research as opposed to fundamental research. Now, there's always this division. There's always a little bit going to applied and a little bit going to pure research. But increasingly, certainly in Australia, and I think in many other countries, there is more and more being channeled towards very specific applied research. And applied research, of course, is usually embedded within some economic aspiration. And lastly, we have some publication metrics usually as used as a measure of success. It's most commonly listed for us. It's the most common measure of how well we do, publications and patents. But these are like GDP. They're a proxy for what we're trying to measure. GDP tries to measure the good of an economy and the good of a society. We all know, every economist will acknowledge, it's a rough, crass measure. It's not quite right. And publication is supposed to measure good knowledge creation. Well, we all know publication is at best a crass measure, a kind of approximate of good knowledge making. It's not actually an accurate measure. It's a proxy. One thing to note is that we humans are very bad at predicting the future. We're just not very good at it. We do it, but we guess. And so part of these assessments try to force us into some future, and it's worth thinking about how we do this. And there was a really interesting report that came out in 2021 by the IMF. And the IMF is a fairly conservative group. I think we can all acknowledge that. And they make the point that basic research, fundamental research, is not tied to any particular product or country and can be combined in unpredictable ways and used in different fields. And what they find is that basic scientific research affects more sector in more countries and for longer than applied research. The conclusion, very simply, is that if you've got to choose where you split your pie between pure research and applied research, you should put more of it in pure research, whereas most countries tend to put more in applied research. Longer term, for the world as a whole, that does more good. So what if our approach to research was mostly like an A-growth? And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that we acknowledge that we don't really know the outcome of research. We put less emphasis on what we can clearly measure and more on what we think will generate something greater than the measurable outcomes. So we pursue something that might be really interesting to know about, but we don't know what we're going to get. We don't necessarily base it on the amount of publication or what it's going to generate for the economy. Partially because if we knew what we were going to get, it wouldn't be research. Research fundamentally starts with not knowing what we're going to get. So it's being more open to this. Well, the first thing we'd have to do is to probably move away from our emphasis on short-term evaluations, allow for research to go on much, much longer. And we need to overcome some of our challenges with the funding sectors that we have. And probably one of the things that would make research much more interesting here is to have a better integration with the various disciplines. We need to restructure our research environment. Responsible research and innovation, RRI, aims to do this. It aims to harvest our innovative capabilities to create a better future by working with and for society. But RRI policy, at least in the European model, was very much embedded within this kind of for growth paradigm of academia. We still had to publish lots, we still had to produce things, and often, in fact, it even says in the RRI policy that it's about growing the innovation to boost the economy, and in particular to overcome what's known as the innovation valley of death. So it's often embedded within this innovation for growth structure. And that needs to be reimagined, which allow thoughts to run more freely and broadly. Importantly, if we pursue sort of a growth in research environment, we need to overcome our zero failure trap. And it was really interesting. Just last week, I was at a launch of a Rio Tinto, the big mining company, has just invested 150 million pounds, I think, in a multi-institutional research center on critical mineral. And my university is one of the universities involved in this. And so their chief innovation officer was at the launch. That was just last Thursday. And he said, we're investing so much money because researchers need the freedom to fail. And I thought that was a really, really powerful line. Basically, if we really want to do something that's interesting, we need to be willing to put money, not knowing what we're going to get, because that's how we can be innovative. That idea that maybe nothing is going to come out, but if we don't try, we'll never really do anything transformative. And we need to break away or break free of the activity trap. Having to publish X amount of papers, we have to publish a certain amount of papers every year in top journals. That pushes us to produce, but not necessarily producing anything that's brilliant. It's almost production for the sake of production. And that's not necessarily helpful either. And so we need to revise this and think really about what is the fundamental that we want to do. I mean, there are solutions. One solution has been to think about how we allocate our funding. One solution that I really like is the idea that you have a threshold and lottery system. Rather than trying to find the very likely to be the very best fund, you say anybody who's smart enough, that the research is smart enough, the project seems viable, goes into a pot, and then you allocate just randomly, because we don't really know which ones are going to be best. As long as people are pursuing knowledge with the right method and the right expertise, we don't really know. So I started off saying I wanted to think about how do we harness our innovative capabilities to create a better future and to assess a better future. And I was quite interested in this idea of assessment, particularly strict or quite rigorous assessments like publication matrices, amount of funds you get, or GDP in the economy. And what I want to suggest is that we should take assessment, we should treat assessment very cautiously, because what really matters when we do research and innovation is not the assessment. I hope that what really matters is that we aim to create a better future. And for that, we probably need to give ourselves a lot more freedom to pursue whatever interesting thoughts come, because fundamentally we want to create good knowledge. This work comes out of collaboration with a number of colleagues, and I want to recognize them and thank them for their work. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Medvecki, for your wonderful and comprehensive presentation on innovation itself. So we will now open up the floor for a couple of questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question. Yes, we have a question over there.
Thank you so much, Professor Medvecki. Just a question on does this story actually resonates with economic professors in the economic sections? Because I think in the scientific environment where we also are now, this is really like this is resonating, and you hear some economic experts talking about degrowth, and sometimes I know this discussion also from Brussels, from the discussions in the European Union. But it's still the whole growth. Somebody called it growth fixation. Is so big worldwide, especially with especially in the economic discussion. So do you have those discussions? And are you hopeful actually that it will change something towards a sustainable future we want?
Thanks. Actually, I've worked a lot with people in Europe, specifically in around that. I mean, that's partially why I mentioned the IMF paper, because I thought that was really interesting. I mean, IMF is actually very much a quite traditional economic framework. There are economists in what might be called heterodox economics. Just as a confession, my background is philosophy of economics. So I have an economics degree as part of my background. But there's people within heterodox economics who are very comfortable with this. That is a minority. Also, within innovation sectors, there is some interest. It's true, it's probably friendlier in Brussels than in many other places. It's not an easy narrative to sell. It's not easy to sell, but that doesn't make it false. And so I think there's a real question about how do we get people outside of academia to understand that the value actually is in creating knowledge. And I think part of the challenge is often the things like electoral cycles that are 3 or 5 years, to say, well, look, this might be great over 10 years or 20 years. That doesn't resonate so well. But yeah, it's a challenging thing, and I think that's actually increasingly the challenge for academia in many cases. We are pushed towards this agenda at the detriment of good knowledge making, I suspect.
Thank you. So we have a question from the audience online for Dr. Medvecki. How do we instigate an A-growth approach in a university system where at the institutional level, universities are operating much more on a for-profit model in order to continue functioning? Can you please say more about scale in this sense and how to make change?
So, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because universities weren't always so embedded in a for-growth paradigm. So actually, that's changed. So I think I'd want to be cautious to assume that this is the norm. I would suggest that actually there's been an increasing shift in this way, but I don't think it's the norm. I'm not sure that was ever the norm. How do we? I don't know that we can scale it up, because I don't know that this is something that works in this kind of settings. I think there's a really important question here fundamentally for governments. And I don't think, for example, that government are in any way limited from giving funds that are purely having more funds going to purely blue sky. There are some very simple practical things they can do. Change the amount of money you give to blue sky or pure or fundamental research than you do to applied research. So there are some, I think, fundamental things they can do. I don't think universities themselves can do necessarily all that much, although they may be able to give people more freedom and less administration, but that's not so straightforward. I think certainly at a government level, things can be done, though. I hope that answers the question a bit.
We have another question from online audience. How can we increase R&D stake at state level?
That's beyond my capacity to say how much we can get the government to spend more money on research. Unfortunately, I don't think I have any expertise or right to say anything on this other than lobby. I mean, yeah. Unfortunately, that's beyond go. I think we all agree that the government should spend more money on research. I think there's a consensus. I think if I was to take a poll in this room, there would be just about 100% consensus.
So thank you very much again to Dr. Medvecki. Now we have a keynote speech from Dr. Kun Tang, Associate Professor, Tsinghua University, Bank School of Public Health. Dr. Tang, the floor is now yours.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here today. My name is Tang Kun. I am an associate professor of global health from Tsinghua University in China. As someone deeply passionate about global health and sustainable innovation, I have spent years exploring how to bridge gaps between disciplines, sectors, and countries, and to address the complex global development issues. And today I'm here to share our vision for building a sustainable, innovative ecosystem. In a world filled with turbulence and uncertainties, innovation cannot and should not remain isolated. It must transcend borders, unite diverse perspectives, and work towards a greener, more just, and prosperous global future. The journey we're embarking on today is not merely about science and technology. It's about creating a channel for peaceful exchange, a platform for meaningful collaboration, and an inclusive system where young minds can thrive. Let us explore such challenges and the opportunities and create steps that we can take to bring this vision to life. But before we dive into these challenges, I'd like to commend the Young Academy of Japan of the Science Council for their remarkable and precise summary of the structural problems that hinder innovation and creation. Their insights go straight to the heart of what researchers worldwide experience, offering a comprehensive overview of the critical barriers to foster innovation. And under that framework, I will give you a brief comparison between China and Japan. The situation is amazingly similar, for which I hope I can make you feel slightly better. The most fundamental challenge in building a sustainable innovation ecosystem lies in human capital, more specifically, the cultivation and career development of the young research talents. As shown in this figure, in recent years, China has been expanding doctoral enrollment. In 2022, the number of PhD graduates in China reached 82,300, and this contrasts the trend in Japan, where the number of doctoral enrollment has been declining over the years. Despite this, the number of researchers per million people in China remain only 1,868, significantly lower than that of Japan, the United States, and South Korea. Another big difference between China and Japan is the gender balance among researchers. In China, women makes up to 45% of researchers, while in Japan, that number is only 18.5%. For comparison, in the United States, is 36%, and in South Korea is 28%. As China expands its doctoral enrollment, a few challenges have started to emerge. First, how to strike a balance between the number and the quality of students. For example, more and more students are taking longer to graduate, and more than 60% of doctoral students are unable to graduate just on time. And second, how to make the best use of limited supervisor resources. As the number of students each supervisor oversees increases, the time they can dedicate to each student gets much more limited. And third, how to nurture and select researchers who are truly passionate about academic work. With the job market in China being tougher in recent years, some students are choosing to pursue PhDs just to avoid entering into the workforce. When students entering PhD programs without a clear goal or proper preparation, they are more likely to get discouraged by the challenges, which makes it harder to develop their research interest and passion. And PhD employment in China is a big issue as well. The table shows where PhD graduates from China and Japan ends up. Around half of them in both in both countries go into university jobs, and about 10% work in public research institutions. Academic jobs are still the most common choice for PhD graduates. But lately, the academic job market in China has gotten tougher with limited spots and unnecessary fierce competition. And in China, there is a term called 内卷, which is used to describe this situation. It refers to a scenario where competition becomes more intense without a corresponding increase in rewards, creating a cycle of overwork and diminishing returns. The pressure and low pay in academia has also been widely criticized. Plus, there is an issue of senior academics dominating the field, leaving many wondering how young researchers can make their voice heard. About 40% of PhD graduates are now choosing non-academic careers, but that path is also tough as well. Most PhD programs are focused on academic training, leaving little room for developing skills for the diverse skill set that is needed for non-academic roles, and which makes this graduate less competitive in the job market. And additionally, there is often a devaluation of their degree in non-academic fields. In some universities in China, I can tell from my experience in either Beijing University or Tsinghua University, they are now requiring a PhD for positions like the administrative services on campus, even though these jobs don't actually need that level of education. So the challenging job market in both academia and non-academic organizations has put the PhD graduates in a tough spot, caught between the two difficult choices. And another critical challenge to build a sustainable, innovative ecosystem is a lack of integration, as mentioned by many speakers and audience previously. The lack of integration across sectors and disciplines. Where China has made significant strides in innovation, the result often fall to translate into strong, impactful outcomes. One of the key reasons for the gap is the pervasive silo effect, including the management silos, information silos, resource silos, and technology silos. And these silos fragment the innovation process, prevent the seamless integration required to support a sustainable innovation chain. At its core, the silo effect reflects deeper structural and institutional challenges. The lack of collaboration mechanisms and platforms, different innovation players, the government, the industry, and academia, like effective mechanisms of cooperation. And this fragmentation isolates technological supply from the demand, stiffing the synergies and opportunities. And the weak demand-driven innovation policies also exist. In China, there is a disconnect between the demand-driven innovation, which are the market enterprises, and also the supply-side innovation, the universities and research institutes, with each side working separately. And this lack of collaboration means enterprises aren't playing a stronger enough role in driving the innovations. Additionally, many science and technology projects focus on research for its own sake or to meet evaluation criteria rather than aiming for tangible economic or social outcomes. And this gap leads to inefficiency use of resources and prevent research from reaching the market in ways that can truly benefit business or society. Now, let me talk about evaluation of researchers, as mentioned before. Another significant challenge that creating a sustainable innovation ecosystem is the over-reliance on quantitative and short-term metrics. The issue is particularly prevalent in China, where it has long shaped the environment of research. Driven by this evaluation system, China's publication outcome has grown rapidly over the past 2 decades, surpassing the United States to become the leading country in global publication volume, accounting to 1/4 of the world's total. However, there is still a significant gap in terms of publications in top journals like Nature, Science, and Cell, and groundbreaking innovations remain an area that needs further strengthening. The government has implemented several reforms aimed to address this problem. For example, in 2018, the government initiated to break the 4 exclusives, namely placing less emphasis on the papers, the titles, degrees, and awards. In 2020, the focus shifted further with the push to break the science supremacy, the ICI supremacy in research publications, emphasizing a broader scope for evaluating academic contributions. And by 2025, new interdisciplinary review panels are established to encourage collaborations and integrations across field and disciplines. And after moving away from the 4 exclusives, the evaluation criteria become more varied, aiming to capture a wide range of achievements. However, many researchers have found themselves focusing more on meeting this new matrix rather than actually conducting meaningful research. The shift has unintentionally led to a focus on quantity over quality, hindering long-term academic progress. Another significant issue is how the evaluation system is heavily influenced by the government priorities. Research projects are often assessed based on how well they align with the government policy goals, which can limit the academic freedom and discourage exploratory research. And this pushes researchers to prioritize short-term goals over the long-term innovation and major breakthroughs, reducing the likelihood of transformative discoveries. And additionally, the one-size-fits-all approach to evaluate basic and applied research is always a challenge in many countries. And these 2 types of research differ significantly in their methods, timelines, and output. Applying the same evaluation matrix to both often overlooks these differences, undermining the unique contributions of each. So one of the growing challenges faced by researchers worldwide, not only in China, but worldwide, is increasingly the burden of non-research tasks which threaten to overwhelm them, as mentioned previously by several speakers already. Studies from China, United States, and Japan all indicate that researchers allocate only about 1/3 of their work time to actual research. And one key reason for this issue is a lack of support from technical professionals and administrative staff. In China, many tasks that should be handled by staff members are often placed on researchers' shoulders. And another major factor is that in certain situations in China, societal networks and interpersonal dynamics tend to be more influential than research capacity or the quality of the researcher himself. As a result, researchers may feel the need to spend large amount of time building connections in order to advance their career. There is a common term used in China which can be translated into academic guru, which refers to powerful individuals or groups within academia who hold significant influence over academic decisions, such as funding allocations, promotions, and project approvals. These individuals often hold senior positions and may use their professional network to maintain their power, leading to concerns about favoritism, nepotism, and the lack of transparency. And in project reviews, even before reviewing the application document, many individuals may already have used their internal channels to contact the evaluators, bypassing the anonymity that the process is supposed to ensure. And finally, let us turn to the critical issues of funding. Funding is the backbone of any research or innovation ecosystem, but how resources are allocated and invested and managed can significantly shape the sustainability. China faces notable challenges. This chart on the screen shows you compares the research funding investment in China and Japan in 2023. Japan allocated 3.7% of the GDP to research funding, significantly higher than China's 2.65%. While China's total funding is larger in absolute terms, but the per researcher funding is much less, or half of Japan's situation. And more support from the basic research is needed. For example, in 2023, China allocated only 6.77% of its total funding to basic research, compared to 11% for applied research and 82.2% for experimental development. And this imbalance underscores the need to boost long-term fundamental innovation. And with research funding highly concentrated in government or policy-driven sectors, resources constraints stiff creativity and exploration. Looking at the distribution by research sectors in the chart, both countries dedicated over 70% of research funding to corporate sectors, emphasizing the critical role of business in driving innovation. However, there is an intriguing difference in the allocation of the remaining funds. Japan allocates 17.9% of its funding to universities, while China prioritizes government research institutions at 11.6%. And there is a highly bureaucratic approval process where researchers waste time navigating multiple approval layers and submitting repetitive paperwork before projects begin. And there's always a delay of funding. The funding for research projects delayed due to multi-level approval, affecting project timelines and progress. And there is a serious lack of flexibility. Research funding is strictly allocated, limited the ability to adjust budget structure in response to unforeseen situations. So having looked at the challenges we're facing, I hope no one feel discouraged. Instead, let's use this as a fuel to drive us forward and figure out what steps we can take to make a real change. I think the vision behind the sustainable innovation ecosystem is fostering global collaboration for prosperous, greener, and a just world through inclusive innovation, sustainable development. And to achieve this, 3 core pillars define the positioning of this ecosystem. One is the channel for exchange among countries. In today's turbulent world, we must create an equal and pure platform for science diplomacy, a neutral ground where countries can collaborate and bring betterment to humanity. We should have organizations that amplify the global voice together. Using global voice is key, and this ecosystem must foster cross-cultural dialogues, integrate diverse perspectives, and unite and advocating for collective actions to tackle global challenges. And the ecosystem must champion the role of young scholars, challenging the authority, fostering collaboration, and amplifying youth voices to promote responsibilities and drive innovation for future generations. To build this ecosystem, university, governments, and private sectors play a central role. Together, they must establish a tri-sector collaboration mechanisms to advance interdisciplinary research, strengthen regional partnership, and drive international cooperation. At the same time, this collaboration must focus on 2 key pillars: developing human resources and career path, and restructuring the research environment. So together, universities, government, and companies can construct a sustainable innovation ecosystem that breaks the barriers, foster collaboration, a region and nations. And by advancing science diplomacy, uniting global voice, empowering youth leadership, this ecosystem will drive innovation that is inclusive, impactful, and sustainable. So this is not just a vision, it's a call to action. Let us work together to build a system where knowledge and cooperation lead the way to a prosperous, greener, and just future for all. So this conference, through envisioning and discussing the sustainable innovation system, has offered global scholars, especially the young scholars, a platform to voice their concerns and aspiration while painting the future for brighter, inclusive research environment for all. So we have a vision that one day, young scholars will no longer be shackled by the outdated system, but will be free to explore, innovate, and create without fear of being overlooked. We have a vision that one day, the voices of young scholars will be heard, their potential realized, and their contributions celebrated, no matter their age, gender, or their background. We have a vision that one day our work will be valued not just by number of papers we publish, but by the impact we make, the questions we ask, and the change we spark. And we have a vision that one day our research will be supported by fair funding, enabling us to pursue long-term groundbreaking projects that transcend short-term political goals. We have a vision that one day academia will be a space where collaborations, not competitions, is the norm, where mentorship is abundant, and where young minds are given the tools, the freedom, and the resources to build a better tomorrow. In closing, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to all of you for being here today and for engaging in this very important conversation. Our journey towards building a sustainable innovation ecosystem is one that requires not only commitment, but also collaboration across borders. The challenges we face may seem daunting, but together we can turn them into opportunities across all borders. The challenges we face, I believe the challenges we face will be collectively solved through the efforts and determination. We can pave the way for a brighter and more sustainable future. Thank you for your time, your insight, and your shared dedication to this global cause. Thank you very much.
It's time, so welcome back to everyone. So I'm Dr. Ryuma Shineha from Osaka University, and Associate Professor at the Research Center on Ethical, Legal, and Social Issues of Osaka University. And I'm also Vice Chair of the Young Academy in Japan. And we will now have a panel discussion and with 6 distinguished guests and panel speakers, and covering their various discussion points. So, and so anyway, I would like to talk about 6 points from the how to make better research ecosystem, sustainable and more innovative, and so on. So anyway, that's the let's start our panel discussion and the special presentations from the 6 speakers. And firstly, I would like to introduce shortly the 6 speakers. And firstly, Professor Soyeon Lim, and Assistant Professor, Dr. Professor Soyeon Lim is Assistant Professor of the College of Interdisciplinary Studies, Tonga University, South Korea. And the second speaker is Dr. Professor Chandrasekhar Sharma, a professor at Department of Chemical Engineering, Indian Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. Okay. And the third speaker is Dr. Sugiura from UNESCO Program Specialist for the Natural Science. The fourth speaker is Dr. Professor Srikar Amel, Associate Professor, School of Social Science, Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. And the fifth speaker is Dr. Mai Yoshikawa, a Senior Advisor at Venture Partners. And final speaker is Ms. Mari Inoue, Manager from Merck R4D in Japanese company. So, and anyway, and we will start from the short 10-minute talk from 6 speakers, and then we will go ahead to the panel discussion with the audience Q&A. Okay, so anyway, I would like to start from the speech from the Dr. Professor Soyeon Lim.
Hello, everyone. Konnichiwa. My name is Soyeon Lim from Tonga University in Korea. It's a great honor to be here in this wonderful event today. I'm a researcher in the interdisciplinary field of science and technology studies, teaching at a private regional university located in Korea. I'd like to share a bit about my personal background first. I graduated from a science high school in Korea, which was designed to nurture highly talented students into scientists, and studied biology at a university. However, I eventually chose to build my career in science and technology studies with a particular focus on women in STEM. The challenges I experienced as a woman at STEM field strongly influenced the direction of my research. I currently serve as an advisor to Korea's Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, offering policy consultations on women in STEM and gender equality in general. I'm also a board member of the Korean Association for STS and in the Korean Association of Women's Studies. In addition, I co-host a podcast called 이과여자, Women at STEM in Korean, which aims to raise visibility for women in science and technology and female researchers in general and strengthen their networks. My experiences with gender, regional, and disciplinary disparities and their intersections, as well as my expertise, led me to deeply resonate with the concerns outlined in the advisory opinion from the Science Council of Japan and the Young Academy of Japan. I wholeheartedly support the perspectives and strategies, especially the 10 pressing issues presented in the report. I think there's some. However, due to time constraints, I will focus on 3 of these issues in today's talk. I will specifically highlight the current situation in Korea with an emphasis on women in STEM and early career researchers. Let's begin by discussing the current status of women in STEM in Korea. The data on this slide is from the latest annual report published by Center for Women in Science, Engineering, and Technology. Since the early 2000s, Korea has enacted policies to support and advance women in STEM. As a result of these efforts, the ratio of female graduates in STEM majors and the ratio of newly hired permanent female workers in STEM R&D have shown a steady increase between 2014 and 2022, as seen in the graph above. However, despite this progress, the overall pattern has remained largely unchanged over the past decade. The graph below illustrates that, starting in their 30s, a significant gap between men and women begins to emerge. One's 30s are a crucial period when researchers are expected to advance and solidify their careers. However, many women face the challenges of marriage, childbirth, and caregiving responsibilities, which often hinder their professional growth. Even women who are unmarried or do not have children encounter structural barriers in male-dominated STEM environments where they are often limited to supporting roles. This makes it difficult for women to develop as leading researchers. I don't see this as solely a women's issue. When resources are limited, marginalized groups are often the last to receive access. It's highlighted in the issues number 3, 8, and 9 of the advisory opinion. Several key factors contribute to these challenges. First, there are insufficient core facilities that provide stable employment opportunities for PhD holders. In Korea, women researchers are disproportionately employed in precarious, non-regular positions compared to men. Second, women receive less financial support for education and research, with their representation declining from undergraduate to doctoral levels. Finally, temporary declines in productivity due to pregnancy, childbirth, and childcare have severe consequences for career advancement in academic settings. These structural barriers create significant challenges for women in STEM, limiting their ability to fully participate and progress in their careers. The challenges faced by women in STEM are closely tied to broader issues affecting the entire research workforce. A report published last year by the Korea Institute of Science and Technology Evaluation and Planning highlights 4 key challenges in Korea's efforts to develop its research workforce. First, gap between societal demands and workforce development in science and technology. Second, lack of established culture for collaborative research. Third, insufficient support for graduate students. Fourth, precarious conditions for postdoctoral researchers. This report suggests that addressing these issues requires institutional support for departments and organizations that can provide stable employment for early career researchers. This would prevent young researchers, especially postdoctoral fellows, from falling into an activity trap where they become overburdened by the need to constantly secure research funding, living expenses, and affiliations. It would also enable better financial support for graduate students. Without such structural support, young researchers are left to compete in a high-pressure environment where women who often lack access to dominant male networks risk being excluded from the field. For researchers to produce groundbreaking research, we might call it innovative research, they must have stability, psychologically, financially, and institutionally. Therefore, I believe that strengthening core facilities with PhD holders is crucial for both Korea and Japan to build a more sustainable and inclusive research ecosystem. Well, finally, I'd like to share a more recent situation in Korea, which is based on my own research. I co-authored 2 academic papers published in 2022 and 2024, focusing on feminist developers in AI field and feminist women graduate students in STEM labs. Since 2016, feminist awareness have grown significantly in Korea. Korean women, especially in their 20s and 30s, now see gender discrimination and misogyny not as personal issues, but as structural problems. Korean young women at STEM field are no exception. Many of these women, though still graduate students or early career researchers, recognize that STEM fields are often biased or discriminatory. They also actively work to ensure that the technology they create and the knowledge they generate do not reinforce gender discrimination or exclude marginalized groups or exploit the environment and nature. These women are also very conscious of the social impact of science and technology and its interaction with society. I believe that this awareness gives their research great potential for interdisciplinarity, collaboration, and innovation. Because they are highly aware of gender discrimination and disparity at STEM, they could play a key role in transforming STEM fields to be more inclusive and equitable. This will require expanding core facilities and providing stable research environments for young women researchers. Well, with such structural support, I'm hopeful that more women researchers will enter STEM and contribute to building a more diverse, equal, and thus innovative academic culture. Well, that concludes my talk today. I truly appreciate the opportunity to share ideas today with experts from around the world on building a sustainable research ecosystem. Thank you, and I look forward to working together in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Soyeon Im. Okay, and we would like to move on the second speaker. So, second speaker is Dr. Professor Chandra Shekhar Sharma. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. I'm Chandrasekhar Sharma from Department of Chemical Engineering at Indian Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. I'm also representing as a co-chair of Global Young Academy, and I was also former chair of Indian National Young Academy of Sciences, INEAS. It's really an honor to be invited for this gathering, and I thank Young Academy of Japan for extending their invitation for joining this meeting. While we discuss about the issues, and it's very overwhelming to see that while we discuss the issues before us, there is a much more similarity, whether it's Japan, China, India, or other parts of the world. And this also brings that while science is for all science for the future, but apart from all that, there are global challenges which we all are facing, be it the climate change, be it the food security, safe and clean drinking water, sanitation, or the renewable energy and sustainable habitat. These are all interdisciplinary in nature, and that basically necessitates the transformation we require at the interdisciplinary level. To combat all these challenges, there is a need for having a gathering like this, where we have the diversified backgrounds and where we give the different perspectives. And this brings the importance to collaborate among each other, be it at the local level, to the regional level, to the international level of collaboration. Again, that is where the role of science councils, science academies, young academies, that becomes very crucial. Another important aspect of this discussion today is about the lack of resources and lack of research funding. On top of it, today's fragmented world and the bad economy that also contributes to directly the science and technology funding in an adverse manner. This decline in the funding has multidimensional impact, as we all appreciate and know. It has created lack of interest in science, lack of interest among the young graduates for the research, and lack of trust in science. And that is, again, I would like to emphasize on the science communication, because that science communication may play a very key role in sorting out some of these factors. Especially when we communicate the science to the public, we are also addressing the political implications and political aspects of lack of trust in science. Again, it's the role of science academies like us and young scientists to communicate the science findings and create more impactful science and communicate it properly to the public so that we may enforce some of the changes in the political discourse to ensure more funding in the future for the science and technology. As I said, we see all of us are having more or less similar issues, and all this requires restructuring of the research environment. Now the question is how to do that. There are a few thoughts here. What we can do is we can develop the culture of innovation and celebrating the science and the scientist. We also need to project the scientist and the science as a role model for the community. And this will hopefully change the public perception and create the trust in science, which again is related to the funding in science. We also should encourage science and innovation at the school level, at the grassroots level, rather than talking about at the post-PhD and college level. Some of the key areas for us to focus are maybe science diplomacy, science communication, scientific leadership development, and the new research assessment practices. Briefly, I will touch upon some of these areas in the presentation from the Global Young Academy side. So Global Young Academy, it's headquartered in Germany. We have members from more than 100 countries. And currently we are having 200 members and nearly 450 alumni. We work for the various aspects of science communication, science diplomacy, science advocacy, scientific leadership. And this is a 5-year term. And the median age is around 40 years. And this is the membership chart across the continents. So as I mentioned, there are a lot of challenges faced by the early career researchers, like high competitiveness, job instability, lack of recognition, publication limited opportunities, mentorship, lack of mentorship, and of course the COVID. And this is how we can work, and we are trying to empower the young scientists by collaboration, networking, career development, working for the science advocacy, and developing many transdisciplinary projects. Why to support the young academies? Because we do believe in the diversity and inclusivity. I'm sure the Young Academy of Japan is also not an exception for that. We are working towards providing the role models for the future generation and preparing or nurturing the next generation of scientific leaders. We are also exposed to the important policy issues, scientific policies and diplomacies, and this is also a growing recognition as a discrete stakeholder group for the early career researchers. So we do contribute to the science as well as science policies. So I will briefly mention how the Global Young Academy does it in 3 possible ways: the research collaboration amongst the Global Young Academy members and its network, positioning our members in the key partner institutions, and also developing the program for the interdisciplinary skills. I'm not going into the details of these programs, but we do have the interdisciplinary grant for exploratory and curiosity-driven research, including the low and global North and global South countries. Then there are various working groups of Global Young Academy, as I mentioned: science advice, science diplomacy, women in science, science and art, science in war regions. So there are various working groups. There are various strategic projects on which we are working, especially in the Latin America and Africa regions. At-Risk Scholar Initiative, this is also a very new initiative from the Global Young Academy to support the early career researchers who are in the war zones. And then there are various grants and strategic projects. Positioning members, so here there are various groups in which, international groups where the Global Young Academy membership is placed, including the International Science Council, UNESCO, World Health Organization, and so many. I'm very glad to share that very recently UN Secretary General has formed a scientific advisory board, and Global Young Academy finds a place there to raise the voice of young scientists there. So as of now, we can see around 50 members are nominated to these world organizations, and they raise the voice of early and mid-career researchers. And third, development of interdisciplinary skills. We do believe in science leadership for the young scientists. There are specific programs, training programs for the science leadership workshop in different regions of the country, of the world, inclusive leadership trainings, and then science with society projects. Training in policy memo writing, this is also an integral part, and intercultural communication workshops. These are the regular programs for the Global Young Academy. So again, to summarize, these are the 3 aspects where we work very closely with the early and mid-career researchers. We also facilitate the formation of young academies in different parts of the world. And currently, we are having a network of around 65 countries, national young academies. We also found a mention about the G7 Science Academy statement in 2016, and Global Young Academy is working on those action points. So we value intergenerational collaboration, recognizing the ECR as an important stakeholders in the process, and we are also nurturing the next generation of scientific leaders. With this, I would like to briefly brief my presentation and close it here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chandra, and thank you for the valuable information about global activities of Global Young Academy. So, and okay, that we will move on to the third speakers. And the third speaker is Dr. Ai Sugiura from UNESCO program specialist from UNESCO. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Ai Sugiura and program specialist for natural science at the UNESCO Regional Office for East Asia. And today I would like to start by really thanking the organizer for allowing a really unique experience. I have my baby with me here today. And she was very confused because usually when I go to work, she stays, right? So, and I keep on telling her, today you're coming with me to work. So thank you very much. Then I would like to thank as well the Science Council of Japan and the government of Japan, and then this opportunity given to UNESCO Regional Office for East Asia to participate to this conference. So I would like to very briefly tell you about what we do at UNESCO, and then how then we see that we could collaborate with all of you then to try to tackle then all those issues. So our office in Beijing is the cluster office for 5 of our member states. So in alphabetic orders, Democratic Republic of Korea, the Democratic People Republic of Korea, sorry, Japan, Mongolia, People Republic of China, and the Republic of Korea. And then so our mission is, and our work here from Beijing is then to implement all the UNESCO programs within then those 5 member states. And so UNESCO is the only UN agency with a specific mandate on science. And also our constitution starts with these words, since wars begin in the minds of men and women, it is in the minds of men and women that the defenses of peace must be constructed. And we do that, building peace in the minds of men and women through different areas of competencies, from education, culture, communication, information, and then natural and social sciences, for which then I'm responsible for in our 5 cluster countries. So I will very briefly tell you what we do so that you see then the range of activities that we have and then the areas that we cover. So we have 3 main divisions, one on science policy and basic science, with our flagship program on international basic science. And then this division as well is leading the implementation of open science. Also promoting the education on engineering, education and standardization, and then all the issues about women in science and representation of minorities and so on within then science in general. Then we have the division of water sciences with the only UN program, intergovernmental program on on water. And here as well, we tackle then all issues related to water, not just drinking, actually, from disasters to groundwater, everything, education as well. Then for more secure, to reach then water security globally. And then lastly, we have the division of ecological and sciences. And that's where we have, this division is hosting 2 of probably UNESCO most famous programs. So with then the Man and the Biosphere program with the biosphere reserves, or the Eco Park in Japan, and then the International Geoscience and Geopark program, which then also includes the UNESCO Global Geoparks, and then also then the Natural World Heritage. And we have 2 other cross-cutting sections, one on small island developing states and one on disaster risk reduction, which look then in particular, among other things, at then the climate change issues. Okay, so yeah, so this was supposed to come afterwards. This you can't see behind, but I just wanted to tell the context for which then UNESCO works for science for a sustainable future. So UNESCO is responsible for 3 international decades. One that you can see in the corner here, the United Nations decade of ocean science for sustainable development. Then the second one behind is on the international, on indigenous languages. And then the last one that just was launched last year, the International Decade for Science for Sustainable Development. And we need everyone's help and then everyone to then manage to then implement all these programs. And then so please use us to then maybe advocate as well of some of the issues that you would like to. So we publish as well every 5 years, more or less, the UNESCO Science Report. And so the last one was published in 2021, but the data are up to 2019, so they are pre-COVID. So maybe the landscape has changed a bit. So these were then the global share of GDP, research spending, researchers, publication, and patent for the G20 countries. And then I just had made a snapshot for then the 3 member states we have on the Beijing office. So China, Japan, and Republic of Korea. Then we can see then for Japan a little bit more significant drop than for our neighbors. Then this were as well, like I took just snapshots from what were within then the last science report. So these were also the challenges to sustainable innovation ecosystem that were listed within then the report. So unequal access to resource and technology, over-reliance on quantitative metrics in academia, and funding gaps for fundamental research. But we have been talking about all this already before. And then what was quite interesting for me is to see Japan is here on, then these are like specialization and average of relative citations for cross-cutting strategic technologies by countries and regions. And then we see Japan is here on not specialized and low impact. So US is in high impact, but not specialized as well. And we see China really much here with a specialized low impact and high impact, just half-half. That was quite interesting to note. These were also like the top SDG related topics of research in our region. And then we can see like for China, Japan, and Korea that we have a very big focus on for the top 5 topics by specialization, a very top focus on energy. I only have 3 minutes, I will go very quickly. So here we have, I wanted to just tell you as well, so we have heard it also all along. Before launching then the International Decade, we did a survey, and then here are then the conditions, the snapshot that we had on the situation of science globally in 2023. So still the investment in ST and SNT is below 1% of GDP globally. We still have underrepresentation of women in science. We still have very low global science literacy, only 15%. And globally, there is a decline on government researchers. And so that's why then our decade, and it's really aligned with Professor Chandra's the Global Youth Academy goals as well and vision, so science for all. And our mission is to engage then all societal actors to further advance science and equally benefit from it. And for that, we have 2 frameworks, the UNESCO recommendation on open science and the UNESCO recommendation on ethics of artificial intelligence. So recommendations are not legally binding, but once they are endorsed, all our member states have the obligation to report implementation every 4 years. So that's just a recognition then globally of the importance of that. And then I wanted to give you just a brief definition of what we think in UNESCO of open science, so which is not just open scientific knowledge, And of course, open source, open data, open access is very fundamental in the accelerating the sharing of scientific data. But we need infrastructure to enable that. And most importantly, and that's maybe the new part on the recommendation, it's that this is not just about distribution of knowledge, scientific knowledge, but this is also about co-creation of scientific knowledge. And so we need to further engage with societal actors, so involving local communities, policymakers, and so on. We need also to integrate better traditional indigenous knowledge with knowledge into modern sciences, and we need to communicate better on science. Science should serve society, so that's the message that should be super clear for anyone. And then, so just as well, coming back to then the recommendations from the group and so on. There is actually a global standard with another UNESCO recommendation of 2017 on science and scientific researchers. So this was endorsed as well by all the member states, and it stated very clearly then the roles of the government and everyone on the rights as well of the researchers and so on. So I won't go because I'm already over time. I just wanted to, so you can read, I have printed that on purpose so that you can read it. And so I just want to say that with UNESCO, we are promoting a certain number of networks and that you are more than welcome to participate to all our networks. We also have this program for women in science with L'Oréal, where we have been promoting amazing female researchers, but also encouraging raising talents. And then UNESCO is a big family of of course, we have the UNESCO chairs, we have the UNESCO Category 2 centers, and we have the UNESCO designated sites. So the Biosphere Reserve, the UNESCO Global Geopark, and the World Heritage Sites, they are all living labs, all things that where people can contribute and can be mobilized. And so that's the number we have in Japan and so on. And they can be testing ground for anything. So this is the example in Jeju has all the designation. It's the triple crown, as we call. So that's the example I gave here. But anyway, what I want to say is that we encourage to strengthen then regional research networks. And then if there's anything that we can do more from the regional office, so please let us know. So we've been promoting a network on on natural product chemistry, well-being and safety, on biodiversity and food security. Or we are really happy to help and promote regional networks. So to scale then up open science initiative in East Asia, maybe on a new metric of output of science. So not just papers, but policy brief or engagement with open citizen science and so on, that we can promote as well more and give more visibility. Prioritize ethics in innovation, and empower youth and interdisciplinary research. So as I said again, with hands-on and so on, and using then all the UNESCO sites and all the UNESCO family. So this is just an invitation to collaborate with us. So we are here in Beijing, and so please just contact us, and we will be more than happy to then advance anything that we can do together and use our visibility, if any, to then promote and go further into then solving some of the issues. So thank you very much. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ai Sugiura. And we would like to move on to the next speaker. The fourth speaker is Dr. Professor Zulfikar Amer from Nanyang Technological University.
Okay, konnichiwa. Very good afternoon. It is a great honor to be here, and I would like to thank Science Council of Japan and the Young Academy of Japan for inviting me all the way from a little island called Singapore. My name is Zulfikar Amer. I'm an associate professor of science, technology, and society in the School of Social Sciences, Nanyang Technological University. I'm originally from Indonesia, and I've been working in Singapore for over 15 years. I'm just wondering, how many of you have been to Singapore? Anyone? Okay, quite a few. How about Indonesia? How many of you have been to Indonesia? Okay, it looks like it's balanced. Okay, that's great. So I've been asked by Dr. Shineha to talk about two countries that are completely different, Singapore and Indonesia. And I'm trying to compare these two countries, although I know that I probably won't do any justice to these two countries because it's just too many differences between these two countries in terms of the size, in terms of the economic performance and so forth. But I would like to try from my own perspective, which is from science, technology, and society. So as a scholar of science, technology, and society, I've been working on a number of different projects for the past 15 years. It started from technology and development and moved to nuclear politics. And after Fukushima, I switched to nuclear disaster and then moved to urban infrastructures. And for the past 5 years, I've been working on urban resilience. And currently, I'm doing a research project on digitalization and politics of AI. But what I'm going to talk about in this presentation, which is only 10 minutes, is something related to my early work on techno-nationalism, which is the intersection between science and politics. Because of time constraint, I'm not going to give you any numbers. So my talk will be very much descriptive. And I would like to start my talk about science and politics by mentioning a prominent American sociologist, Robert Merton, who started the study of sociology of science back in the 1930s. And he was the one who's responsible for creating an image that science is completely autonomous, that science is separated from politics and other institutions because it needs this autonomy to be able to work properly for the society. So Merton and his colleagues believe that by having this autonomy, the science institution will have the ability to stay objective and to produce knowledge that will be beneficial for society. But not until the 1970s, when sociologists and other social scientists start to recognize that science is always intertwined with politics. And they start to see the fact that science and politics are very much blended, especially in the post-war period in the United States. So they believe that the institutional or the structural politicization of science started in the United States after the end of World War II, especially after, in the formations of National Science Foundation. And that's where the government or political institution began to sort of have a control over the production of science through the institutions that funds this scientific practice. And this model eventually was adopted by Asian societies. And it started in Japan back in the 1950s during the Reconstruction era with the formation of MITI, right? And MITI contributed a lot of effort to restart the scientific institution, including the nuclear research, energy research, manufacturing, and etc. And this model began to spread across other Asian countries, including in South Korea, in Taiwan, in Southeast Asia, and of course now in China, where the government becomes the leading player or the leading actor that pushed the development of science. And it is this Asian experience that we see how science and politics are very much intertwined, and this is reinforced by the interest of the Asian states in using science for economic growth. So knowledge production in today's world is very much politically conditioned, and this is it becomes even clearer during the pandemic period, where we see the correlation between political leadership and the ability to mitigate the pandemic. So power relation determine what knowledge to produce and not produce, and this has been proved by many STS scholars. And we see that how scientific process and progress is very much determined by how institutional structure are designed to facilitate these processes. And at the end of the day, we see that the kind of knowledge that produce, the kind of institutions that are built very much reflect the socio-political environment. And this is what we see in Japan, in India, in China, and of course in Singapore. So I'm trying to use this framework to compare these two countries that I think it's very impossible to compare, Singapore and Indonesia, okay? At least there's a few commonalities between these two countries. They both are multicultural societies that recognize the diversity of ethnicity and languages. It is a less democratic government, according to some political scientists, although democratic institutions exist. And what is interesting is that these two countries consider science to be very crucial for the economy and industry. But yeah, the commonalities between these two countries stop there. And then we look at the differences between these two countries. Now, Singapore is a small country with 6 million people. The GDP income per capita is $80,000 a year. And it is very much organized in terms of the institution, in terms of the scientific facilities. So we see how science is very much structured around what the government says. Now in Indonesia, it used to have a very strong techno-scientific institution back in the 1970s, all the way until the Asian monetary crisis in 1998. But after the democratization process, which unfolded in late 1990s, scientific institutions become more sporadic, and especially these days, it's very much organized by individual organizations, and there's a lack of integrity between these two institutions. And when we look at the scientific practices in these two countries, anyone who have experience in Singapore will get the sense that scientific practices in Singapore are very much incentivized. I mean, researchers are given more incentive to do their research, and it creates a very competitive environment. And one of the facts that I need to highlight here is that 60% or probably more than that of researchers in Singapore are foreigners, because Singapore very much lacking the manpower to do research. And this also applies in university where the percentage of foreign professors I think makes about 70%. So Singapore very much relies on global talent, and they try to sort of invite people from all over the world to come to Singapore. While in Indonesia, researchers get less incentive. So they try to find their own resources in order to conduct their research. But on the other hand, it creates more encouraging environment for scientific entrepreneurship, because more scientists, more researchers are not dependent on the government budget. They try to work with other non-government institutions, and this creates some kind of output that is quite different from Singapore. So the challenges in Singapore, if we need to improve the scientific environment in the country, is that how to expand the spectrum of scientific enterprise, because it's very much government directed. I think it's similar to other Asian countries like in Japan or China or in Taiwan. And the thing is, Singapore government is very pragmatic. They don't, Well, they've been involved in many large-scale scientific enterprise like quantum computing, synthetic biology, and etc. But it is very pragmatic in motivation. And I think this is the challenge where researchers should be given more flexibility in addressing social issues from people's perspective, not from the government perspective. And challenges in Indonesia will include how to build integrated and synchronized structures, because I think this is what is lacking now, especially with the current government that doesn't really pay attention, serious attention to the role of science and technology. And how to create more creative and independent scientific culture becomes another challenge in which the government are not the only one on the plate, but how the people and the environment should be addressed as well by scientific community. And I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sulfikar. And I would like to move on the fifth and sixth speaker. And next two speaker is from the private sector, and valuable implication insight from the private sector will be surprised. And I think we have a lot of things to learn. So for the academic sector. So, okay, that's the fifth speaker is Dr. Mayu Yoshikawa. Please start.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mayu Yoshikawa. I'm so honored to have this opportunity today. So for my self-introduction, I have 3 key roles at this moment. One is a senior advisor at Arch Venture Partners, which is a US-based VC focusing on company creation and the investment in physical science and life science field. And second, I'm also a president of the Typewriter TX Japan, which is a subsidiary of Typewriter Therapeutics, developing next generation gene editing technology platform, as well as pipelines. And lastly, I'm also a chief strategic officer of ACES, which is a startup company spin out from Shinshu University, Nagano, Japan, and which developed CAR-T treatment for solid tumors. My background is molecular biology, and I have lifetime ambition to utilize research and technology from academia for address the social challenges like healthcare issues. And then this passion have the root in my early experience at my early career when I did a research internship at South Africa, where I worked on tuberculosis diagnosis system. And then I could experience that how scientific innovation can impact on the global health.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yoshikawa-san. And okay, that's final panel discussion speakers. So we will invite the Ms. Mari Inoue from Mercari R4D. So.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the last talk, and you might be a bit tired, so please relax and take it easy. Listen to a little bit of my talk. So my name is Mari Inoue. I'm from Mercari. Mercari is C2C marketplace company in Japan for second-hand goods. And R4D is a division in Mercari, which is the research and development division. So I joined Mercari in 2021, and I've been involved in managing research projects. I also conducting the overall operations in the organization. So I'm very happy to here to talk about work with you today. So let's start with what R4D is all about. You might notice it's not R&D, but R4D. R4D is a research organization that I told you before. And we use 4D, which is design, development, deployment, and disruption. In particular, the D for disruption is really important for us as we aim to advance toward the social implementation by disrupting the existing values. So here I will highlight three main characteristics of R4D. First, R4D is a research organization aiming to realize the society that Mercari wants to realize. So R4D promotes research and development that isn't connected to the existing businesses. That's the one characteristic. And second, since we aim to approach society itself, our research area is quite broad, I think. It includes the humanities and social sciences, as well as IT field. The third characteristic is ethics and social responsibility. The Mercari is a company that has close relationship with customers. So therefore, we conduct ethics review for all research projects and also provide regular ethics training for researchers. Here are the research areas we are doing right now. We work on quantum information technologies, which is like forward-looking research. We also work on accessibilities, which is more closely related to our business, I think. We conduct research in humanities and social sciences, including communication research and LC, which is ethical, legal, and social issues. Here, I'd like to briefly introduce one of our research projects, the LC project. We started this project in 2020, collaborating with Osaka University's LC Center. LC refers to the ethical, legal, and social issues that may occur when new technologies are implemented in society. It includes all issues other than technical challenges. For R4D, we aim to implement research into society. So we believe that LC is very important for us and working on this project. Initially, this project focused on the potential LC for individual R&D projects in R4D, but we are now progressing to explore LC considerations for the entire Mercari group. Also, we just press released last week, but we will be establishing a Research Alliance Laboratory in Osaka University in this July. We will further expand our LC research there. You can find more information about this in the press release. The QR code is here. So in this slide, I would like to talk about the two research examples in the LC project. The first example is enhancing R&D ethics review. This has been an ongoing project since the beginning of the project. Initially, we focused on creating our own research ethics guidelines. We had the guideline before, but we referred to the existing guidelines mainly from the medical field. So we wanted to we wanted to customize it for us, and so that every researcher can understand easily. We also expand the scope of the guidelines to cover not just research, but also development and social implementation stages. However, simply creating the guideline isn't enough to ensure that they are followed. So we developed an application format for ethics review so that each researcher can follow the guidelines naturally. The second example is about inclusion and diversity. In 2023, Mercari took action to correct the gender pay gap. This initiative was reported as a pioneering case in Japan, but there are also questions and interest raised about this, like its feasibility for the other companies and the methods used for the analysis. So in order to address these questions, we held a workshop within the LC project, inviting Mercari I&D's personnel as well as experts in the economics and data science fields. In this workshop, we clarified the details of the model that we used and also underlined assumptions and conditions. We then compiled the analyzed information in the workshop into the research note and made it public so that we aim to make our analysis transparent and accessible to other companies as well. Now I'd like to talk about initiatives for investing in people. When we think about innovation, we need to increase the flow of people between industry and academia, we believe. So we are working on PhD support program as one of our initiatives. We launched this program in 2022 to support employees, internal employees, pursuing PhD challenges, regardless of their research field. The program has three main features. First, we provide financial support for tuition fees up to 2 million yen per year. This amount generally covers the full tuition for most universities in Japan. Second, we offer flexibility in balancing work and research. Employees can adjust their working hours based on their research commitment. Finally, we provide research consultation support from R4D. So why we started this program? From a social perspective, we've observed that the number of PhD holders are decreasing. This trend is due to several trends, we think, like including fewer academic positions or like limited private sector career opportunities or the high cost of pursuing PhDs, etc. Additionally, there is limited mobility of researchers between academia and industry in Japan. So due to these factors, we may be in a society where the innovation is difficult to occur. So at R4D, we believe that PhD holders are essential for driving innovation. So we have hypothesis that PhD holders work great, not only in academia, but also in private sectors. PhD holders have like valuable skills and experience, not only for deep knowledge and skills in specific research areas, but also they have ability to identify essential questions and also the foresight to drive projects forward, I think. So these skills are highly relevant and valuable in the business world. So we aim to explore and promote the potential for PhD holders in the private sector. The PhD support program also brings value to Mercari, the company. First, we can discover new research area, new research ideas that we haven't found on our end. Second, we can build new networks through this program. The third, this program is also effective for human resource development perspective, helping employees grow their skills and experiences and contribute to Mercari's mission. Lastly, R4D actively engages in outreach activities. We strive to make our research accessible to a wider audience through YouTube, Instagram, or etc. So we are working to explain complex research topics in an easy to understand manner. So if you are interested in, please check out our channels. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Inoue-san. So, okay, that we will start the question and answer session with the audience in person and via online. However, that if, of course, I know you are all so tired, so that if you need some rest, please take a rest freely. So, anyway, however, that we will go on. Okay. Okay. Anyway, so and. Thank you very much for your great talks of all panelists. And I will start some questions from my facilitator and registered questions, so that the many questions is coming through the registration and Zoom and so on. So that's the and could you show the outline of the questions? So and from your talks and the keynote speeches and the panel speeches, I made some questions, question points about these discussions. So, for example, we need to think about the research culture, the next research culture for the future. So, to overcome the excessive workflow and the too much research culture of metrics, too much metrics research evaluation culture and publisher perish. So, of course, we need to think about the work-life balance to the sustainable life for the researcher life, so and the career path. And of course, that the last two speakers and talk about so many insights about partnership with between academia and industry sectors. So and also that's the during the keynote speech and our panel discussion speech, like with Dr. Sayon and so on, and issues on minority in STEM and if we add STEAM and other fields, so minority issues. And also that we need to think about possibility of science education and communication to the broad access in the society. So anyway, so that I would like to start from the some issues on research cultures. So I would like to firstly add two questions. So firstly, that's the partnership with the industry sector to the Dr. Yoshikawa and Ms. Inoue. So, and Inoue-san and Yoshikawa-san, I would like to ask about the what is important for ventures, capitals, and companies to expect. What is the expectation about the university's activities for the venture capital and the private company? For example, and in the case of the Mercari, is the Inoue-san that shows a significant case and the example of the collaboration between the private company and humanity and social science. So you were introduced. So that's what is the point and expectation for the university, and what is the expertise is expected for our skills from the private sectors. So that's please add information and your opinions and firstly. So I would like to start from this point. So.
Thank you very much for the question. R4D is, I think, a bit unique organization. I think in general, a corporate research organization tries to solve problems for the existing services or products in general, I think. But in R4D, we don't fix the research area. We try to contribute to the society that Mercari wants to realize. So our question is what we should solve first, what we should address to. And we actually don't know because the society we are aiming to is really broad, like the all forms of values are like circulate to unleash people's, potentials. That's our, mission and the society we want to realize. So there should be a lot of, research fields like overlap together. We can't find, this research area we need to research, like with this research topic we need to solve. We don't know that. So rather than like picking research area or research, specific question, we want to collaborate with academia peoples and discuss what we should like address to first, and also collaborating a lot of fields, researchers, not like limiting to this research area, but in order to solve some problems, the social problems, there should be a lot of research areas we need to tackle with. So we want to create some like community and to talk with a lot of people. Does this cover this question?
Thank you very much. So please.
Okay, thank you. It might sound like a little bit philosophical answer, but these days I feel like there is. I wonder what is really the difference between academia and then companies, because these days more and more researchers at the academic field are working on practical project, and then also on the other hand, as I show in an example of the Arch and then flagship, even in the companies, they are also working on more, challenging basic science or new ideas. So I feel like now the border is getting broad, vague, and then so I don't have the clear answer, but I feel like instead of thinking that academia versus industry, I think we should think about new approach, and then example, startup companies these days get a grant from NEDO, AMED, and then JST, and then we utilize those kind of grants for companies' research. So that is what I'm observing right now.
Thank you very much. I agree that there is no big difference on the point is that we are now participating in the knowledge productions. So that there's no difference between the private sector and the academic sector. I think so. And however, that's I would like to connect to the second question is the question concerning open science. So you know that now global as a global context and also Japanese context, open science and open access, including open access and so on, is now very hot topics for the science policy and the research evaluation also. However, and for example, that's Yoshikawa, Sugiura-san's talk in the open science have a lot of broad ranges of meaning. So not only open access, but also that's the broad meaning of the democratization of the science. So that's I would like to ask this point. So that what should we do and think about the next science policies for open science, and how to encourage open science for the researchers, overcome the current research evaluation failure system, something like that. And anyway, so and however, that's this open science is a little bit mismatched with the patent system, something like that. So that's to try to find and high and try to occupy the information about the knowledge. So that's what do you think about such kind of the future system of the open science and the current issues of the open science with the how to say the industry aspect of the knowledge? So
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, it's so the open science itself is something that is been happening for a long time. But then with the UNESCO recommendation, it's the first time that we have first a normative instrument, and then that we have also a recognized definition. And so in this, then yes, it's not just about the distribution of scientific knowledge, but it's also about acknowledging the co-creation of scientific knowledge. And then, so yes, the issue so far, and so the recommendation has been endorsed in 2021. And we will publish a first monitoring report this year. But then, yes, we still have a lot of challenges on awareness raising on what it is still, and then what it means then in practical terms, as you say. And also, yes, you mentioned the patent issue, but then open doesn't mean open just like, you know, without any rules. So it's open following the FAIR principles. So findable, what was that? I don't remember anymore. So the FAIR principles, and then also CARE principles for indigenous data, and so on. So it's not necessarily in contradiction. And then also we have in UNESCO, we have a system now, an implementation strategy with working groups, different working groups were working on different aspects. And then one of the main thing is then how to change the culture of science on this. And then also then one thing maybe because you might be referring also that, right, to the publish perish thing. So if we open all our data or share everything, then don't we have the risk that somebody else published before us and so on. But then we would like also to see maybe alternatives of what are research outputs, so not just those papers and so on, but then that you are also acknowledged and recognized on what you have been sharing on the data itself. But also one big issue with all the open science principles and then open science implementation itself is that who is going to be doing all the data sharing and who's going to be doing all these shouldn't be one more burden on the researcher itself, right? So it's, I think researchers have so many things still to do, and then they shouldn't have to then deal with all those data preparation or standardization and so on and so on. So I think, yes, so what we are trying with all these open working groups, so you can go on UNESCO website on open science, and then it's freely accessible. You just register and you can you have a voice there. Anyone can participate. So to really like co-create what will be then the implementation of open science, and then raise then all those issues as well. So I'm not, yeah, hope I read the answers in a way, so that it's not also in the awareness raising issues that we have, so maybe not in Japan, but then when we work with more developing countries, a lot of stakeholders think open science equals free science. And it's not free. You still need infrastructure. You still need a lot of things. That it's not just free science. And so all these as well, we need to raise then awareness together, but also like advocate very much the benefit of open science. That's, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, very rich information and insight. And I think that this point and open science is the one of the key to overcome the disparity between the global north and global south, and so international collaborations and partnership with them. Of course, that not only academia. So I would like to ask Dr. Chandras, so that you talk about a lot about global young academics discussion today. So, and is there any discussion and about how to promote open science and to foster the collaboration between the countries and overcome the disparity between the global north and south? And so, and please, could you tell us some information at the GYS?
Yeah, I think open science is definitely a very important topic for Global Young Academy as well, as we believe in science for all and science for the future. That is a vision statement for the Global Young Academy. So one aspect of the open science, which I think I would like to highlight here, is the access of the data, access of the publications. Many of us, we do have the subscription-based models where a lot of these publications they are available only for the privileged section. When I say privileged section in terms of financial capabilities of the nations, of the researchers in a given nation. So just to highlight one example that how it can be overruled. So especially I would like to take an example of India. Indian government very recently have come up with a agreement with the almost all major publication houses in the world, and they adopted a one nation, one subscription. What does it mean? Basically, the government of India, Ministry of Education, will pay for all these subscription-based models rather than individual institutes or individual researchers. So that is one way forward, that where this the load on the individual researchers or individual institutes who are not really capable enough financially or strategically, and they are deprived of the scientific knowledge. So this will overcome that. As far as Global Young Academy is concerned, we do believe in sharing and exchanging of our documents and all the information, knowledge amongst the members and alumni through various channels. And whatever knowledge we produce by having the collaboration between the members and alumni, it is all in the open domain, open science domain. So I mean, we strongly advocate for that, but I think it's the onus is on the scientific organizations and the individual governments to come up with a very clear open science policy in their respective countries and organizations, so that this can be further strengthened, as I said, the example of India. So I think open science is not just a slogan, or it's something necessity for the future, in which we are looking for inclusive science for everyone.
Thank you very much. And the final phrase is a very key word to the next question about how to think about the inclusive issues in science, and including intersectionality and humanity issues in system. So, and during today's discussion, keynote speech and panel talks, and there are many mentioned about the gender disparities in also Japan and South Korea and so on. And we need to think about the such kind of disparity of genders and to overcome gender issues. However, we need to also the other factors and synergistic interaction between gender and areas, countries, races, and ages, and so on. And now that's currently that this the interaction of the disparity factors is called as intersectionalities. And however, that's the how to think. And I would like to ask this point on the intersectionality and to overcome kind of xenophobia in science, and to make the inclusive society and inclusive science. So that I would like to ask Dr. Sayons, and how to think about the so that's in your talk that mainly today it's mainly focused on the gender disparities and kind of the stereotype role of the women in South Korea and so on. However, I guess that there is a kind of synergistic interaction between the gender and areas inside South Korea. So that's please add the information about the intersectionality issues so in the South Korean case. So.
Thank you for the question. Well, yeah, there is really the intersectionality in this disparities and discriminations in STEM field. Well, for example, intersection of gender and area. In Korean case, it's interesting that I myself is like kind of the located at the intersection of gender and regional disparities. Well, in terms of statistics in Korea, there is a big gap between like national university and private regional universities in terms of the gender ratio. So the ratio of female faculties in national university, most of them, of course, some of national universities are located in also the regional areas, cities in Korea, but they are more, I would say, privileged. And then the private regional universities have they more focus on education than research. And then the ratio of female faculties in national university is, I think, is under 20%. And then the ratio of the same, I mean, the female faculties in private universities is almost 30%. So there is a clear disparities between national university and private universities, and it's also related to similar patterns are found in the universities are located in capital city or big cities, and then universities are located in those provincial areas. So there is definitely the intersection issue, intersectionally issue. And then also I'd like to kind of mention there is also gender disparities, but not, it's also intersect with the subfields in STEM area. So for example, biology, chemistry, more women, but physics, engineering, and they kind of majors and much less women. So these days, in Korea, I mean, statistically, 30% of undergraduate students majored in science and technology are women. So it's going up, but still the pattern, like 30% is like, it kind of disguises all the variation of all those different subfields. So I think that's really important issue to look at. I mean, just inclusive, make the STEM field more inclusive and diverse.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask the similar point to the Dr. Speaker. So, so in your talk, that you were comparison about Singapore and Indonesia. So that I guess that there is a kind of the difference and the gaps between the two countries about their gender disparity and area disparities and other kind of the issue like global north and south and so on. So that's and do you have any idea about do you have any insight from your experience to the two countries and to your careers? So.
Okay, so basically, Singapore and Indonesia, as I already mentioned in my talk, are very much different in terms of the institutional structure of the sciences, as well as the financial capacity of the government in funding research projects and programs. But I think despite the disparity between these two countries, there's broad opportunities for the two countries to collaborate and to cooperate in many scientific fields. The fact that Singapore is lacking natural resources and lacking manpower, I think it's something that will render the country to depend so much on other countries. On the other side, Indonesia is such a natural rich country with 280 million people. I think it's a great potential for Singapore to collaborate with, and so that I think it's just how these two countries to come to terms in terms of the area that will benefit both countries and how to carry out a joint project so that they can produce scientific knowledge and technological innovations that will be useful for these two countries. And I think in many areas, these two countries have been working together, especially in the fields such as renewable energy, transportation, as well as I think marine science. So these two countries have been in collaborations. But what I want to emphasize, while we're talking about collaboration here, is actually a great potential and opportunities for countries like Indonesia to work with countries like Japan. I think Indonesia and Japan has a lot of commonalities, and the fact that now Japan, which is a technologically advanced country, but is facing aging population, while Indonesia is a country with more productive ages population. I think it is very timely for these two countries to work together. Japan may be interested in sharing their technology to Indonesia, while Indonesia will contribute from the manpower and natural resources. So I think it depends on how we build a model of science diplomacy and science collaborations between countries that have differences that will overcome the challenges that these countries are facing. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So, and already so many insights is coming, but I would like to open, and next I would like to open, sorry, that my question is related to the registered question. So, and anyway, I changed my perspective to the in-person question and online Zoom question. So, okay, that firstly, I would like to correct question from the in-person. Okay, that's already 2 hands was raised. Okay, that's the first and second. Okay. And please, and third. So sorry, and okay. So are you ready? So the translator, okay. Mic をお願いします。
ありがとうございます。お聞きしたいのが裾野の拡大といいますか、でいくらしても若い人たちが子どもたちが後をついてこないとサステナブルにはなりませんので、その裾野の拡大、いわゆる初等中等教育の子どもたちへの浸透といいますか、そうすることによって科学者になりたい、研究者になりたいということで裾野が広がって高くもなってくると思うんですけれども、そのような取り組みといいますか、先生方の国といいますか、でまた企業のさんの立場から一言いただければというふうに思います。お願いいたします。
Okay, Dr. Chandra.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question. And since I am associated with the Indian Young Academy as well as Global Young Academy, I would like to highlight a few examples. So especially the Indian National Young Academy, one of the primary focus for us is to engage the school students and build the scientific temper among them. So we started a lot of science outreach programs for the school students, right from class 6 and standard onwards. And one thing what we realized is that one is the exposure. So we expose them to the high-end research facilities and the infrastructure in various parts of the institutions. And second is, as I mentioned in my brief discussion about the science communication. So what we realize, especially for a country like India, which is multilingual, we cannot limit the science to English. We have to reach out to the ground, we have to reach out to the grassroots level in their own language. So we need to develop the scientific education in the local language. That's where we can connect them better and expose them to the new avenues, new developments. And third, which we also do, that we as a society, we should celebrate the science and celebrate the scientific role models, especially even for the women, younger girls. We do create some of the scientists, young women scientists as a role model. Even the government of India has started a program, it's called Vigyan Jyoti, which is a full 1 week long residential program for the school girls students. They come to the higher education institutes, they spend almost a week with the different faculty members, especially the women faculty, and try to learn that how they can leverage upon their experiences and learn from that how to manage or how to make a career in the science. So this is one aspect. Secondly, as far as Global Young Academy is concerned, we again have a very emphasis on connecting the younger generation through various science outreach programs. So again, I think to summarize that we need to create the role models for these younger generation. We need to expose them with the different opportunities in the science and make it more attractive. And third, I think the science communication in their local language.
Professor Sharma just mentioned about the importance of role models. So I just want to add some of my opinions about the role of role models. I think it's more concerning about the science education for girls and young women. I used to think that the role models, especially female role models, are really, really crucial to nurture, many girls into scientists. But I have kind of changed my mind. It's from my personal experience, and then also it's from it's from some surveys and researches and things like that. Well, especially for girls and women, if you show them the women scientists who have just excellent and outstanding achievement and outcomes, then their standards are just go too high. And then, well, personally, that's why I gave up being a scientist. I don't think I can be that genius. But then for men, for boys, since there are many male scientists, there is a variety of men scientists. Some of them are really good at math, but some of them really good at experiments or business or just all kinds of scientists among men. So I would say let's show girls and young women not really role models, but I would say references. So we need to show more diverse references, like different kinds of female scientists and engineers to girls and young women, so that they can have more self-confidence and you know, and then just keep going their career as a scientist. So I really want to emphasize that.
Thank you. Okay, that's Dr. Sugiura to response and second question and third question. So
Okay, so yeah, just let me reply. So there is a very big program of UNESCO, the Education for Sustainable Development, which is actually a flagship from the Japanese government within then UNESCO itself, where then it's an approach, right, to give the skills and the knowledge to children so that they can take informed decisions and actions towards then a sustainable future. And so this is worked through curriculum and so on. And then, so this is done by my colleagues from the education sector. In science sector, we have, so this is a way, right, to have environment, economic, social aspect, everything always integrative within then an issue, and then having, learning how to approach that, which is like science-based scientific approach and so on. But then within the science program, with then the UNESCO designated sites, we also have examples of the sites becoming labs, where then the local schools come to then look at something and learn either about biodiversity or about the geological heritage, about something. And then I know that for instance, in Japan, the Oki Island UNESCO Global Geopark, for junior high school, they have even developed a part of the curriculum, so that then the local schools, then they go and they are inside that geopark, and then so it's very close to them what it means. It's not just theoretical science, it's really, really hands-on. And then so that's also how we try to very much make sure that science is not magic, or it's not something super difficult or anything. It's just a tool as another to answer questions and understand our words, and then so to demystify everything. So that's how we're trying to work through our program, at least to on scientific communication as well, and outreach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's please second question.
Thank you. So I would like to go back to the 10 recommendations presented earlier in this event. I had the feeling that everyone in this room agrees to that recommendation. But on the other hand, if we go out of this room, you know, it's a very different world. Geopolitical tension is rising, and there are ever more pressure on the for-profit, economics type of innovation. So my question is, how would you communicate to the policy sector, public, general public? So what is the near-term strategy to make that communication?
Yeah, very difficult question. So, okay, Dr. Chandra, please.
Yeah, I think very relevant point you have raised. To me, I think the way forward is to have more science diplomacy. What we are missing in general, scientists, I mean, the science and the diplomatic relations, they are kept apart. But I think it's a time to revisit that policy, and science diplomats or science diplomacy has to play a very key role. I understand that much more of the policies are driven by the economic factors, but when so that's where I think the role of science communicators and science diplomats come into picture. So we need to effectively communicate to the public that how science is related to the economic development, and that is where we need to take it at the diplomatic level to bridge this gap in the ever fragmented world. So I think the science communication and science diplomacy, these are the two answers for this.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask Dr. Fabian and Moaz. So.
Thank you very much. I've got a question for you two who were talking about industry before. I find it really, really exciting. But just beforehand, I want to say just one thing about what you were just saying, Professor. You know, there's a lot of data that actually women who get put up as role models also get a lot of negative reaction as women. And I think if we do want to put women as role models or even in the public sphere, we've got to also think about our duty of care towards those women, because I mean, I know a bunch of colleagues I know in Australia and New Zealand who have been put forward as, you know, representative of scientists, and then they've been harassed, they've had all sorts of things thrown at them that men scientists don't get. So I think there's a duty of care if we say to women, you should go in the public sphere, about what we do to actually give them the kind of protection that they can be in the public sphere in a safe way. I think it's a really difficult conversation. So I just want to echo your word that I think this is something to be taken very carefully. I really loved both of your talks. I thought they were really, really exciting. And it made me think, you know, one of the concerns that we hear, and as the gentleman was just saying before, is that certainly in academia, we are pushed towards this kind of research that is often for-profit in some ways or embedded in the for-profit model. But it sounds like actually industry could be a great disruptor in a good way of allowing a space for quite pure research to go on, which actually is a really exciting prospect, right? I mean, there's a space for industry to take and maybe give even more freedom than we might have in academia, because the academic system certainly has changed. So there's something really, really exciting there, right? I think that's really fascinating. At the same time, there's a tension, because being for-profit, inevitably there's commercial interests at play, certainly if data comes out. So then there's questions around openness, around transparency, around sharing of data. If there's commercially sensitive data, it's possibly not so much desire to publish it or put in the public sphere, depending on the interest. What do you think the role of industry is in allowing to have great science, and how do you think that might be playing with this idea of open knowledge? Does that make sense? Sure. I think industry could be really, really exciting in giving a space for science. How do you imagine that going? What could it do? But also, how can it do that without shutting science down because it has commercial interests? You see, so that knowledge still has to circulate. That's, for many people in science, an important part isn't just the capacity to research, but for that research to go into the world. So how could you imagine that? What could industry give? Because I think it can give a lot. I just don't know how, but.
So please, and Yoshikawa-san, maybe. Inoue-san.
Yeah, thank you. That is very important question. And we often see the tension between the researchers and also, for example, R&D people or more advanced stage, the researchers in the or staff members, employees in the advanced research stage. But we are thinking a bit positively, like those kind of tension are everywhere, not only between the basic research versus more advanced research, but also between the I don't know, HR versus the employees. So we are always trying to enjoy finding the mutual benefit or the mutually agreeable space. But at the same time, to be honest, in my experience, hiring too much basic researchers in companies cause difficulties, because as you mentioned, if the companies are not big enough, usually they need to shift the focus as the pipeline or R&D progress. So, so especially for the small companies, we try not to, recruit the basic science in-house. Instead, we, ask the scientists to keep in the academic field and then collaborate together. But we make sure to give them the incentives so that they are willing to work for the companies. And then they will come back to us again in the future, again and again. That is how I think we mean the VC are trying to build the relationship around.
Thank you very much. And so sorry, and this is time. So I really apologize my time management issues. So sorry. And however that we have to end up, but please big hand with the panelists. So. Yeah, as this year's conference comes to be a close, and we welcome to invite Professor Hibiya Junko, Vice President for the International Affairs Science Council of Japan, for the closing remarks. So thank you very much.
So please be seated. Well, thank you very much. I would like to first of all express my deepest gratitude to all the panelists and keynote speakers for having agreed to come to Nogizaka, that's the place name of this building, in person. I also would like to thank you, the participants, who some of us, you are with us here, but some are online from 30 different countries and regions. Taking the 10 recommendations from Young Academy of Japan as a starting point, today every speaker shared their views with concrete data, and also they shared generously their experience. Although all of you come from different backgrounds, I have been stunned by the fact that some points are general and we have so much in common. Let me highlight just 5 points, and I don't mean to be exclusive, but these 5 points are really impressive for me. Everybody mentioned researchers need enough time to concentrate on their work. Also, it's important to take seriously work-life balance. Of course, gender issues that are intertwined with other factors such as age and area. Challenges in research evaluation, and so-called silo effect. It is very important for us, based on these, for example, 5 points, to leave Galapagos. And I would like to especially thank Dr. Yoshikawa for bringing this wonderful and most fitting metaphor to this floor. Now, why do we have to leave Galapagos now? That's because for sustainable society and science, we really have to empower young people, not just researchers, but young children as well, by creating diverse and inclusive environments. In so doing, we have to overcome, number one, zero failure trap, and also activity trap. These two traps are really a big obstacle for that goal. So we really have to work on that. And today we have a very important step, and that is our nursery, which Chair Kano mentioned at the very beginning. I think Chair Kano said it's a small but important step. Am I right? Yes, it is a small step, but symbolically speaking, I think it's a big step. And I particularly would like to thank those of you who came here in person with your children, including Dr. Sugiura. Thank you so much for coming here with your baby. So this concludes the international conference today, Ecosystem for Sustainable Innovation Towards Sustainable Science and Society in 2040. And I would like to ask everybody to continue our discussion, maybe online in the future, so that all of us, particularly young academy people, join in the effort to create a better world. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, and this remarks the close of the International Conference on Sustainability and for the Science and Technology for Sustainability 2024. So thank you again to all speakers, and thank you for everyone and the audience. So we also extend our thanks to our online viewers, and anyway, every audience today. So we look forward to seeing you all again next year, 2025. So thank you very much.